Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Sorry I'm late. I try not to be, and I'm almost never late, but this time I was. I apologize for that. I wanted to talk about a few things, specifically Nick Fuentes and some other interesting stuff I came across. I may do some, normal long-form videos pretty soon. In just a few minutes, I mean. But for now, let's talk about Fuentes.
The conflict mean as it was yet.
Let me step back here. Hold on. Actually, let me grab this video in briefcase, and then we will... Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I just remembered I had some videos in my... Wait. Maybe I didn't. I could have sworn I had a streaming tab that I wanted to cover, but never mind. Okay. Let's grab this Fuentes video and give it a watch, shall we? This is Nick Fuentes. He's about to tell us about how he thinks the war in Iran is going for Donald Trump. Spoiler alert, he does not think it's going well. Fascinatingly. Let's listen. Welcome, Shade Queen. I gotta find something to play. I accidentally entered a game. I did not mean to do that. We'll find something to play.
As you know, the longer it drags on, the worse.
Step back. All right. Okay.
The state of the war is, as you know, the longer it drags on, the worse it gets for us. And look, in a way, I sort of fell for it. In the opening stages of the conflict, when the war started, it looked like it was very one-sided, very asymmetrical. And I said in the early stages, we are obviously winning this conflict. We're winning the war. As it stood, as it was in that opening weekend, in those first maybe 3 or 4 days. But again, understanding the conflict means you have to understand the weapon systems that are being used, the tactics, the strategic objectives. The war only works for America if it's quick. We have better weapons, but we have fewer of them. And it's not as easy to make them. America's not an industrial power anymore. We don't make the weapons. We don't make enough of them. Our adversaries are the complete opposite. They make tons of weapons. And their weapons are not precise. They're dumb. You know, our weapons are smart. They're AI. They're connected to satellites. They're very sophisticated, but they're very expensive, and we don't make enough of them.
You know, one of the big problems with Iran, a lot of people underestimate Iran and how incredibly powerful they are. They're not Iraq by any stretch of the imagination. Iran is a 1 million-man army. Okay, that's not nothing. Wait, I can hear the game coming through. There we go. Iran is incredibly powerful, and you should be disturbed by them. Plus, they're on home terrain. They know the area like nobody's business. And it's a mountainous terrain. It's not easy to navigate, especially if you don't know the area well. They are not a military we want to fight. This would be like... They are nearly our match, at least in boots on the ground. And it's insane that they actually went in to try to fight Iran. It's insane to me.
On the other
And actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to switch to my Nintendo Switch and play this on there because there's a bit of a lag on this one. Hang on 1 second. One power. There we are. That should do the trick. Yeah.
They're AI, they're connected to satellites, they're very sophisticated, but they're very expensive, and we don't make enough of them. Russia, on the other hand, makes 4 million drones a year. 4 million drones every year, and it's native. Iran makes hundreds of thousands of drones, and they actually designed them too. We stole their drone design, their Shahed suicide drone. We just copied that model, reverse engineered it, and made one of our own. And that's actually what we're using in this conflict, although we just have far fewer of them. We're looking to buy drone interceptors or even drones themselves from Ukraine. Again, we don't make them. So this is fundamentally the nature of modern conflict. In the era of the Ukraine war, now in the era of the Iran war, you have these big advantages that the great powers think that they have, like Russia going into Ukraine obviously has a manpower advantage, has more equipment, has more money, has a bigger industrial base, and they go in hard and fast, thinking they're going to topple the
my old high school nickname.
Government and achieve their objectives. There's actually some striking similarities there. And what they then find is that they are ground down by the enemy's defensive capabilities.
Yep. Completely underestimated. Like Russia completely underestimated Ukraine, and the United States is very obviously underestimating Iran. They are not tiny, okay?
And it's sort of inverted. In Ukraine, America was supplying all of these defensive weapons for Ukraine and defensive fortifications and intelligence and the Star Shield satellite system. In Iran, it's the reverse. We are now encountering offensive capabilities, actually, which is ballistic missiles, which are very cheap, drones, which are very cheap, mines, unmanned naval vessels. And these are creating a porcupine-like effect and making it extremely complicated to fight the war. So we came in as the vastly superior power, again, with more weapons, more sophisticated weapons, much larger country, thinking that all we had to do was hit Iran hard and then they would fall over. If that doesn't happen, you're in trouble. And
he's correct here. It didn't happen. They did not fall over. They were never going to fall over because it's a gigantic fucking country with tons and tons and tons of ammunition. And on top of that, nobody is helping. No one is going to help us against Iran. However, there are countries that have allied with Iran that hinted that they were going to help Iran. Like, for example, Pakistan, who has a nuclear weapon, said that they would launch a nuke at Israel if anybody launched a nuke at Iran.
As you know, has been playing out. Trump and Israel, in concert, hit Iran with everything they had. We bombed them over 1,200 times in the first 24 hours. We killed their supreme leader. We sunk their navy. And they had already been severely weakened and damaged in the first war a year ago, back in June. And it wasn't just Midnight Hammer, which is the U.S. strike, the one-and-done B-2 stealth bomber strike. It was also Israel, which a year ago pounded them over 1,000 times and destroyed not just some of their nuclear facilities, but also missile launch platforms. They also destroyed a lot of regime targets, not just the IRGC, but also the Basij. So Iran is already in a weakened state. They got hit with everything the U.S. and Israel have. But now we're entering the third week tomorrow night. And again, those core strategic objectives of the United States have not been achieved. The regime has not collapsed, has not toppled, and there is no sign that it's going to anytime soon.
It was never going to. If it was going to topple fully, somebody worse would have taken its place. That's how these things work. You don't just get rid of a legitimate government and then a good guy comes in. That never happens. The most brutal scumbag available, the one who is the most brutal, will take the position as leader. The one who is least afraid to die. The one who is most insane and willing to fucking kill people always takes the position at the top when there's a power vacuum like that. The fact, like, military strategists are looking at this situation and, like, shivering at how cringy and stupid this whole thing is.
How did we actually arrive here at the end of February, now the middle of March? Well, the timeline was sort of interesting. The whole idea for this conflict began, or I could say that the U.S. began to mobilize for the conflict back in January. And the circumstance in January is that there actually was, or at least there appeared to be, an organic uprising in Iran. There were, according to estimates from Western media, which might not be reliable, there were hundreds of thousands of protesters across the entire country, in every major city, across the whole breadth of Iran. And these protests, they went on for weeks.
I'm sorry, this is a problem. I'm gonna have to fix this. Give me just a second. There's an issue with my audio. I'm gonna stop recording for just a second and then. Fuck. Hold on. I got to figure out how to stop that too. I have to completely change my audio setup, so give me just 1 second here. I thought I might have to do this, but I wasn't sure. Looks like I'm going to have to. So, let's see. First and foremost, I need to plug USB 2 back into my computer. Hang on. Eject storage device. And then plug this in. 1 second. Okay. See. There we are. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to let it play for just a second so that I can fix it the rest of the way. Let's see. We're at 5:21. It should just take me a second to flip some things over. 5:21. All right. Here we go. That was a spam call, by the way. I'm getting blown up with spam calls. It's very frustrating. Current position. Okay, let me just play.
Opposition to the government. And so when the U.S. and Israel first considered strikes, it was in a circumstance where you actually had, perhaps, a latent anti-government ground force. That perhaps if the U.S. and Israel destroyed Iranian weapons or scattered the IRGC by killing the leadership, destroying regime targets, then maybe the people could actually seize control of government assets and arm themselves, or seize control of infrastructure or government buildings. And in a word, maybe there would be an opening.
Okay, let me just try this again. Markers, current position, full screen, formatting. Just a second. Okay, here we go. Let me just start. Try it again here. That should do the trick for us. Remember the other day I said my entire system was completely changed as a result of a firmware update on my soundboard? Yeah, I've been working with that, trying to fix it, but it's been a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. Okay, let's continue, shall we?
It went on for weeks. And then the Iranian regime cracked down on them, according, again, to Western media, in an indiscriminate and an extremely violent way. And Washington and Israel were under the impression that that violent crackdown might actually fuel the dissent, might actually fuel the opposition to the government. And so when the U.S. and Israel first considered strikes, it was in a circumstance where you actually had perhaps a latent anti-government ground force. That perhaps if the U.S. and Israel destroyed Iranian weapons or scattered the IRGC by killing the leadership, destroying regime targets, then maybe the people could actually seize control of government assets and arm themselves, or seize control of infrastructure or government buildings. And in a word, maybe...
Again, that never actually happens. Like, there are a lot of protests, a lot of people very unhappy with what's happening in Iran and the religious zealots that control the government right now. Iran is majority secular. Iran, for the most part, doesn't want a religious extremist government. It's kind of like the United States in that most people in the United States do not want a religious government, but a cleric is the head of state. Most people in the United States don't want a religious government, but religious nutcases control the government anyway. Holy shit, dude, I'm doing so bad on Super Mario World. I swear to God, I'm actually very skilled at this game. Anyway, the point is that it doesn't really matter how many people don't want a religious fundamentalist government. That's what they have. And it's a violent religious extremist government who's willing to kill people. And nobody wants to be the first one to die, so nobody will be the first one to stand up. There have been some protests, and those protests have been encouraged by Israel. And as a result, Iran uses the cover of these are Israeli-backed fake protests to murder the protesters en masse. Tens of thousands, if not more. These people are fed up with life, the life that they're living. And it's not even necessarily the religious dictatorship. They've found ways to live within those kind of confines. It's the economy completely tanking that's causing unrest. The protesters who are protesting the government are not going to be the ones to take over. You know who's going to take over in a power vacuum situation, which we still don't have? There is no power vacuum. The extremist nutcases. That's who's going to take over. We are spending so much goddamn fucking money. Do you know that we could have ended homelessness in America for the amount of money that we have spent since the Iran war started alone? We could have ended homelessness. What else could we have done? We could have, I don't know. Like, here, let's see. Let me see if I can get a list here. 1 second. $630 million just for the pre-war military buildup. Before even the first bomb dropped, it was $630 million. The first 100 hours, CSIS estimates $3.7 billion, or roughly $891 million per day. That's Center for Strategic and International Studies. First 6 days, the Pentagon briefed Congress that costs exceeded $11.3 billion. Through sources familiar with the briefing, those sources familiar with the briefing said actual expenditure is likely significantly higher. Day 12, CSIS updated the estimate to $16.5 billion. So what could we have done? End homelessness? Yes, we could have ended homelessness. We could have funded CHIP, the Child Health Insurance Program. Covers 10 million children annually at roughly $14 billion per year. So 12 days of war is a full year of children's health coverage. We could have funded the WIC nutrition program. A single Tomahawk missile, $2.2 million, could cover 775 children on Medicaid for a year, or provide more than 3,600 children with meals through the National School Lunch Program. Head Start, the entire program costs about $12 billion a year, gone in under 2 weeks of war spending. NIH funding, the entire annual NIH budget is $47 billion. The full war could eat through most of it. Student debt relief, $65 billion would cancel the entire remaining federal student loan balance for roughly 1.5 million borrowers. Clean energy transition, Department of Education's entire loan programs office portfolio used to fund clean energy infrastructure is comparable in scale. There's all kinds of shit that we could have done with that money, and instead we're murdering people with it. Oh, and you know what else we're doing? We're exposing our weaknesses. You know, you don't want to go to war unless it's an absolute last resort, because now everybody knows how weak you are. Everybody knows what your weaknesses are, and they can prepare for it. Like, look at Russia. We now know how weak they are since they've gone into Ukraine. And in fact, we've tailored our weaponry and our strategies specifically to aim at Russia's weaknesses. And these dumb motherfuckers just went into Iran, thought it was a good idea to expose our weaknesses to the world. Genius. That's so super smart.
Maybe there would be an opening for there to be some instability in Iran, and maybe, like I said, an anti-government movement actually coalesce and become viable to replace the revolutionary Islamic regime. But that was in January. And the protests appeared to die down almost at the exact same time that we began to ramp up our military mobilization. And by the time the U.S. got all of the assets in place or out of place, by the time we got aircraft carriers and destroyers and half of our Air Force in the Middle East and most of our personnel out of the bases that were not protected by Patriot missile batteries or THAAD systems, the protest had already been crushed, and had been crushed actually a month ago. So we went into the conflict really just wishing for the best. It's actually a head scratcher, and I think that when all of this is said and done, the history books will show that this was a catastrophe. This was just like a completely unmitigated disaster.
Yes, absolutely.
And ultimately an unforced error, a war of aggression, a war of choice that was conducted with no planning, hastily, without a clear idea of an end game, an exit plan. You could even say a plan in the middle. Like, there just seems to be, from the beginning until the end, no concrete idea of how this would play out. And so when the
even worse than that, there isn't even like an explanation for why they intended to do any of this, and they had no idea some of the shit that was going to happen was going to happen. Like the Strait of Hormuz closing. Are you fucking kidding me? Iran has been talking about the Strait of Hormuz closing as their leverage since day fucking one. How did you not know that was going to happen? What?
U.S. went in, we hit them really hard. And where we are 2 weeks later is that the regime is not just intact, it has totally survived. And now the people have rallied behind it. And the people that have survived inside the regime are now hardliners. Who is the supreme leader? Well, it's the former supreme leader's son.
Yeah, that's who we expected to be the supreme leader. You've got an endless supply of fucking nutcases in Iran is the problem. You need to find a way to handle this diplomatically because you will never kill all of the extremists. You will just make more of them as you kill them.
His wife was killed. His daughter was killed. His father was killed. All of his colleagues were killed. This is supposed to be the compliant new leader of Iran that is going to be more willing to or likely to engage in diplomacy, that will make more concessions. This is the new government. This is the new regime post-decapitation that is going to normalize ties with Israel. Obviously, it's worse from the point of view of trying to extract compliance. This new Iranian regime is going to be actually vengeful and even more defiant. Not only that, and this is the second aspect of it, in spite of the fact that we've degraded some of their heaviest weapon systems, we sunk their navy, killed the supreme leader, destroyed, according to different estimates, 3/4 of their missile stockpile or missile launch platforms, Iran still maintains the ability to strike U.S. allies, assets, bases, and more importantly, shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. So the regime is intact. It has survived, and it's pissed off. It's defiant, it's angry, it's vengeful. They're not going anywhere. And again,
okay, it's not like a person. It's not defiant, and it's not pissed off. But okay, yes. You have completely fucked everything all the way to Kingdom Come. Good job. Hope you're happy with that. I mean, I'm talking about Donald Trump and his nutcase regime. And Nick Fuentes has been opposed to the Iran war this whole time, to his credit, although he's a neo-Nazi. So take that for what you will.
Again, there are 200,000 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So if you think we killed 12 of them and now it's a chicken with its head cut off, that's not the case. They're always going to have more people that they can promote. And that's because they prepared for this. They knew what this war would be like. They knew how Israel and the United States would strike. They knew our game plan. And so that's why, in the buildup to the conflict, they had succession in place. Not just the second man or the third man, but down to like the seventh man, the eighth man.
More than that. I mean, the United States has a line of succession that's like, I don't know, 19 people long. Hang on. And we take that seriously because a government is in real danger when there isn't a clear line of succession. The transfer of power is when a government is at its weakest. Damn, I thought you could step on those fish. So these people made sure that there was a line of succession clear. Yeah, 18. I thought it was 19. 18 people in the line of succession. Vice President, Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate, which is Chuck Grassley, Secretary of State, then Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, then of Commerce, which is Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Labor, and then of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yes, he's in the line of succession, number 12. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner, of Transportation, Sean Duffy, of Energy, of Education, of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins, and finally of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. She's in the line. Are in the line of for. So that's 18 people. I thought it was more than that. Iran has a dual power structure, so it's a little bit more complicated, where the religious cleric is at the top, and so is the actual government. Like, they have an actual non-religious government as well. first vice president acts as the president if the president is capacitated. Speaker of Parliament is number 2. Number 3 is head of the judiciary. And number 4 is the 3-person council then has 50 days to organize a new presidential election, basically. So actually, wow, I thought they had more people in the line of succession than that. I guess not. The 3-person council is now working on organizing a new election, I suppose. Or they've chosen a new religious leader, but that's for the secular state. Interesting. I'm just reading here. The concept of Marahia, or Mara'iyah, in Twelver Shia Islam, the dominant branch in Iran, religious authority flows through the concept of Mara al-Taqlid, literally source of emulation. Believers choose a living grand ayatollah to follow for religious guidance, and the most widely followed becomes the supreme marha. There is no formal line of succession for that. Interesting. Okay, let's continue.
In other words, the United States can kill a lot of the leadership before they exhaust the bench in the IRGC. Clearly, as has been demonstrated by the government of Iran, there is no splintering, there is no dissent, there is no factionalism. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard and Iranian government has rallied behind a new supreme leader. They have rallied against the incursion from the U.S. and Israel, and all we managed to do is piss them off.
Absolutely agreed, for sure.
And the second aspect of it, again, is if Iran is able and maintains the capability to launch missiles, and that's all they need to do. They don't need frigates. They don't need a navy. They don't even need an air force. They don't need any of that. All they need are these very crude and cheap and dumb ballistic missile launch platforms and ballistic missiles, and that is all that they need. Because Iran is a big country. It's a big country with mountainous terrain, with a massive population. And the United States, they've bombed with Israel 3,000 targets. They could bomb 10,000 targets. They could bomb 20,000 targets. Will they have destroyed every missile launch platform? Will they have crippled Iran's ability to make missiles, to make...
Again, they have a 1 million-man army. Missiles aren't even that important in the face of a 1 million-man army. Holy shit. Do you know how many people are in the U.S. military? 1.2 million. Theirs is 650,000 plus another 350,000 in reserve. So to be fair, our army is bigger. But if they're being attacked on their home turf, they're going to call in their reserves of 1 million people. We're not calling in our reserves to invade Iran. 1 million people. It's like they outmatch us in every single way over there. I know it's hard to believe. They do. They outmatch us in every way in Iran. They have the home field advantage. They know the terrain. They have 1 million people that they don't have to create supply lines for. We have to create supply lines. Where are supply lines even going to go? We are no match for Iran in Iran. If we were meeting on unfamiliar ground, say we were both meeting in Israel, it would be a different situation. But we're not.
New ones and replace the ones that have been...
just think about Switzerland. Do you know why Germany never invaded Switzerland? Because of the Alps. Because they had mountains all around Switzerland and were basically immune as a result. they would be able to repel any attack in those mountains. Even though Switzerland was fucking tiny compared to Germany and Italy, both. Germany and Italy actually wrote up a plan to invade Switzerland from each side because they both border Switzerland. And they were like, fuck it. We're not doing that. That's a bad idea. We're going to lose all of our fucking troops because these people, like, you're just throwing people at it. Let me just see if I can find a clip real fast. Hold on. Here. Yeah. Watch what happens here. This is what would happen if we went into Iran. I'm sorry. This is what would happen if we went into Iran with death on our minds, boots on the ground, against their 1,000,000-man army in their mountains. Just fucking destroyed in every single way. We do not have a hope of beating their 1,000,000-man army on their home turf.
Crippled Iran's ability to make missiles, to make new ones and replace the ones that have been destroyed. The answer is no. They can always source the components because they're cheap. They can always move the missiles around because they're very mobile. They could take them apart and build them back up in another place. And they're always going to have a deep bench of soldiers that are willing to do this. And the more that they get hit, probably the bigger the bench grows. And this is what is happening this week. In spite of everything that has been thrown at Iran just yesterday, there were 3 ships that were hit in the Persian Gulf. 3 ships. And many of them not even in the actual strait. There was one that was hit in the Strait of Hormuz. 2 tankers were actually hit closer to Iraq, closer to the coastline of Iraq and Kuwait. So we are 2 weeks into the war, entering the 3rd week, and you still have the threat of missiles being launched. Strait of Hormuz is like 40 miles long. It's not big. So you actually don't even need a ton of missiles. You only need 3. You only need to hit 1 ship for all the hundreds of ships that are in the Persian Gulf to know that it's not worth the risk to leave the Gulf, that if they try it, they might get hit. There's not a lot of room there. And the threat is still so bad, the U.S. Navy won't even provide an escort. There's been talk in the past week and a half that maybe the U.S. Navy will intervene and you'll have a naval ship escort a chemical tanker, a cargo ship, one by one through the strait.
Why the fuck do we need to even do this? This is completely pointless. This isn't unnecessary. I'm just so infuriated by the entire fucking thing.
I have something in my teeth. But they won't even do that. Even the U.S. warships are not willing to go through the Strait of Hormuz. It's too narrow. It's too risky. Iran is still launching surface-to-sea missiles. So even after all this talk, and there was talk about the government will provide insurance for the ships. There was talk about the U.S. Navy will provide an escort for the ships. Trump is begging these companies to keep the traffic flowing. Even in spite of this, the U.S. warships won't even go there. Forget about an oil tanker. Forget about a cargo ship. It's totally closed down. What effect is this having now on the global economy? Well, not only do you have the energy supply constrained because of the shipping choke point.
There was literally no point in any of this. What the fuck is happening right now?
So that's 20% of the world's oil that moves by sea, goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a huge energy crunch on the global oil market. But then you also have the effect that this is a pipeline. This is a metaphorical pipeline. So you actually have a flow of oil. It's continuous, which means the oil is extracted, the oil is refined, it's put on a ship, it's sent through the Gulf, through the Strait, to its destination where it is then consumed. Well, it's not just that the oil isn't getting where it needs to go, but it's backed up. The flow of the oil has been backed up, which means that now Kuwait and Qatar and the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, they have to fill up all of their reservoirs of oil. All their storage capacity for oil is reaching 100%, which means they don't have anywhere for all this oil to go. There's another problem here. So not only is the oil not getting to where it's intended, but where the oil is being made, now the oil's got nowhere to go. So now all of the largest oil producers in the world in the Middle East, or among the largest oil producers in the world, they're cutting back on production as well. This is extremely costly all the way around to not have the oil go through, having hundreds of tankers stuck. It's going to be very costly to eventually get them out. It's the cost of storing the oil, and then it's the cost of reducing production and then ramping it back up.
Right. And when are we ramping it back up anyway, for that matter? Like, when are they getting to where they're supposed to go? There is no timeline on this. There's no solution proposed. There's no nothing. So all of this oil is just sitting there doing nothing. What's the plan?
And all of this is creating inflation. All of this is creating very severe and acute economic problems for a global economy which is already fragile. For example, in the United States, what has been the economic game in the United States for the past few years? It is this tricky calibration. How do we increase economic growth without increasing prices? It has to do with interest rates. We have had chronically and persistently high inflation for a number of reasons. Prices are rising. Prices are getting out of control, as everybody knows. At the same time, job market is cooling off. Businesses are not hiring more people. Those that have been fired are having a very hard time finding new work. I think the median time is like 8 weeks or something. People are out of a job for a very long time. Economic growth might be slowing down. Spending might be slowing down. There's some worrying trends there, some recession indicators.
Fucking everything is slowing down, and we're basically guaranteed to have a recession because you're removing people from the economy. And that means GDP is going to shrink. GDP is a representation of the total number of goods and labor and services and everything, the size of the economy in a country. When you remove workers from that economy, it's going to shrink. And that's exactly what ICE is doing, removing people en masse from the economy, obviously.
Indicators. And so the question facing the Trump White House and the Federal Reserve is, if we increase interest rates, or rather keep them high, well, then you're going to tamp inflation down and maybe prices can get back under control.
There's no hope of fixing inflation unless you start bringing people back, bringing immigrants back, because that's how all of this works. This dude knew that was going to be the result of deporting people en masse, and he said, it's a price I'm willing to pay.
And that will alleviate some of the economic pain for the middle class, working class, people living paycheck to paycheck. But if you keep interest rates too high, then businesses might not want to invest, and then the economy can't grow. And so you have a low growth economy. Even if prices stabilize, then people are still not going to get higher salaries. Maybe there's going to be increased unemployment. Jobs are not being created. So you have low growth, which is very bad if you have rising debt. Because in order to keep up with the pace of the rising debt and deficits, you need to grow your way out of it.
Yes, we are completely fucked. Hence my cup, as you can see. We're fucked. And it's your fault, Nick Fuentes. I know he's talking shit about Trump right now, but he contributed to this by a wide margin.
Conversely, We're cutting interest rates. Cutting interest rates stimulates investment. People are going to take their money out of the bank. Investors, banks, businesses, funds, they're going to take their money out of the bank and they're going to invest it in the economy. And you're going to grow the economy. You're going to get more jobs. You're going to have more business creation. Maybe you're going to be able to grow a little bit more and get out of the shadow of this mountain of debt. But if you cut interest rates, then you also might have an increase in prices. The velocity of money increases. There's going to be more spending. And if there's more spending, there's more demand. It's going to drive the prices up. This is a very delicate equation. This is what got Joe Biden out of office and ultimately Kamala Harris to lose the election. This has obviously been a sore spot for the president as well. He's not happy with the fact that prices have not completely stabilized or then come down. He's frustrated with the Federal Reserve Chairman, who is reluctant to cut interest rates and, in Trump's opinion, then unleash economic growth. So it's in the middle of this very delicate game that we're playing, where we might actually ultimately wind up with both low growth and high prices, that now you have an energy shock. Energy is beneath everything else. Shipping, transportation.
This is what Nick Fuentes wanted. Dumbass, you really didn't see this happening? Literally every fucking person to the left of hunting immigrants for sport saw this happening. I cannot believe, I refuse to accept he did not see this coming. He absolutely did. Welcome, charging magic missiles. I was getting some food because I'm hungry. All right. And I'm actually going to create a suspend point here and now play FF8.
Industry, it's all powered by fossil fuels. It's all powered by energy. Everything moves on freight. Everything moves on ships. Everything flies in planes. Industry, households need energy for their electricity, for machines. You have a global increase in energy cost. You have an increase in everything cost. You have an increase in all prices. And by the way, I don't need to remind you, it's a midterm election year. So think about what we got ourselves into. This is the mind-boggling nature of the conflict. We start a war with Iran. Think about these questions that were just maybe never considered or never got a sufficient answer before we started dropping the bombs. We're planning on going to war with Iran. We're looking for a regime change. Now, to get a regime change, you need a ground force. And we know that. We know that you can't get a regime change without dropping, or rather, just by dropping bombs.
Right. You have to put boots on the ground. But we have to supply our men with stuff. They don't. They have the home field advantage. Everything about this is fucking stupid. A 1,000,000-man army. We have to transport our 1 million people to Iran. They don't have to transport 1 million people there. They have them there right now. This is why you fight proxy wars.
We go into it determined that we're going to once and for all confront Iran. It will be decisive, meaning that the regime will be defeated and ousted. That's the stated goal. That's the intention. That's actually the strategic imperative. We go into the war thinking we're going to topple the regime. And the war doesn't work if that doesn't happen. Well, we can't topple the regime without a ground force, with air power alone.
Okay, is this game frozen? What the fuck? I remember every time I come here to this point, I always think to myself, it's got to be frozen, right? And then it finally starts moving again. That was fucking weird.
But we go into it a month after the protests have ended. We start thinking this is a good idea because there's massive protests. Those will be the ground force. If we hurt the Iranian military, well, the people might take their guns or take their assets or overpower them, and then that's your ground force. That's your regime change. So we need a ground force, but we don't have one. We need to win the war quickly, and that means toppling the regime. But we can't do that. We know that the first thing Iran is going to do if we hit them is close the Strait of Hormuz. We have no plan to reopen it. We have no ability to reopen it. We're in a midterm election year. In order to win the midterms or to be competitive, you need to have a stable economy. You need to be popular. Well, this is not only the most unpopular war in history, but it's also raising all prices. It's also actually going to cause inflation. Closing the Strait of Hormuz necessarily means all prices are going to rise. It's going to increase energy prices. That will increase the rest of the prices. And that effect will linger probably for years. And so when you think about all the constraints, there's a logic to all of this. Was none of this considered? Did they not think through any of it?
Apparently they didn't. Like, the first thing they should have done is secure the Strait of Hormuz and shoot down anything coming close to it, if this is really what they wanted to do. But they didn't. I don't understand. This is the stupidest shit imaginable.
You really have to scratch your head and wonder what exactly was the plan here? What was the goal? Because again, if you need to win a fast war, then you need to topple the regime. If you need to topple the regime, you need a ground force. We knew that none of that would happen. We knew that we weren't going to topple the regime because we knew we couldn't do it without a ground force, and we knew we didn't have one. We knew they would close the Strait of Hormuz. And if we didn't topple the regime, we knew it would be closed for a prolonged period of time.
Well, you and I knew it. But it truly, honestly, seems like the Trump administration didn't know. They have military strategists there at the White House that plan this stuff, that talk about, you ever done a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. No. Yeah, opportunities and threats. Did they not SWOT this before going in? I don't understand what the fuck is going on. You know that Hitler's regime was very, very incompetent as well. Dictatorships have a tendency to be very, very incompetent. But they have no scruples. They're willing to fuck anybody over for any reason. Think about it this way. Andrew Tate is filthy fucking rich, right? You know how he got rich? He got rich doing what any of us could have gotten rich doing, but we didn't because it's an evil fucking scumbag thing to do. Pimping out women, prostituting women, and taking their money. That's how he got rich. We would never do that because we're not fucking evil. Dictatorships have a tendency to do the things that nobody else will do because they're too evil.
And if it's closed for a prolonged period of time, there's no way to open it up. You can't destroy every missile in Iran. You can't destroy every mine or mine-laying vessel. And if you can't do it more quickly than they can build new ones. And if you can't do it in such a short amount of time that it doesn't have these ramifications. So in other words, this was in a way inevitable. It was inevitable that we would get sucked into a prolonged attritional war that would hurt the economy, that would damage the political prospects of the Republicans. It was inevitable because we knew it wouldn't be fast.
Right. A war of attrition on their home turf is the stupidest shit I have ever heard in my life, and nobody would ever suggest such a thing if they have half a fucking brain.
Because we knew we couldn't topple the regime, because we knew we didn't have a ground force. So what was the logic here? Now, this is the latest from the New York Times about the crisis in the Strait, about how Iran appears to be winning. It says, quote, Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. officials, an effort that could further complicate U.S. efforts to restart shipping there. While the U.S. military said it had destroyed larger Iranian naval vessels that could be used to quickly lay mines in the Strait, Iran just began using smaller boats for the operation on Thursday. Again, it's like we go in there bombing their navy, bombing the big stuff. This is our weakness. The current capabilities, the current state of the art of warfare actually favors the defensive side, because Unmanned vessels, unmanned vehicles are cheap and they're easy to make. Drones are cheap and easy to make. Missiles are cheap and mobile and easy to make. So you can be as big and sophisticated and technologically superior as possible. If you can't destroy every single one of these very tiny, very cheap, very robust weapons, you're not going to achieve your objectives. That's the problem. So we destroyed all the frigates. Well, they just started using smaller ships that lay mines, and we can't destroy all of those. It says strikes have hit multiple vessels in the area, some of which Iran claimed responsibility for. On Tuesday, an Iranian deputy foreign minister denied that Iran was mining the strait. In his first remarks since the war broke out, Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, said in a written statement on Thursday that the lever of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must continue to be used. The new mining effort is not particularly fast or efficient, but the Iranians appear to be hoping they can lay them faster than the U.S. can clear them, and therefore create a further deterrent for ships moving through the strait. The U.S. military said this week that it had attacked 16 Iranian mine-laying ships. So this is the current state of the conflict. And again, it's a head-scratcher because we knew it would go this way. How? One, we knew all this information going in. Two, it already happened. This is exactly what happened last year in June. Almost exactly. Israel started the war in June of last year without the United States. Unlike this conflict, they launched the war in a surprise attack, and they did it with help from inside of Iran. There were missile and drone strikes from inside the country against Iran's leadership. Iran was hit with a cyber attack that disabled its eyes and ears, all of its radar, early warning systems, everything like that. And then Israel came in with the Air Force and they bombed the nuclear infrastructure, regime targets, missile platforms, everything. And they did this for 2 weeks. But within days of that initial strike, Iran fixed all of its cyber problems, got their Air Force off the ground, and then Iran started launching these huge waves of ballistic missile attacks, hundreds at a time. And it didn't take long for these ballistic missile waves and drones and cruise missiles to completely overwhelm Iran's defenses. And what we saw in last year's war is that eventually these Iranian missiles were just slamming into Tel Aviv every single day. And if Iran would shoot down 90% of the missiles or 85% of the missiles, well, if you shoot 100 of them, 15 ballistic missiles are going to get through. And they're going to land in these Western, first world developed cities, killing a lot of people and destroying a lot of infrastructure and causing a lot of problems.
Which upsets everybody, especially everybody who's like there and experiencing it. Nobody is going to want to work with you after you do some shit like that. So good fucking job.
And it was during that war that Israel was effectively strangled in the same way as the Persian Gulf. And Israeli refugees were fleeing to Cyprus. It's actually a big problem now. And certain Greek islands. And all of the air traffic over Israel was suspended. People couldn't escape the country. And the economy ground to a halt because people were in bunkers for 2 weeks because they were getting slammed with missiles every single day. And that is ultimately why the United States was dragged into that war. Because only the United States could actually finish the job that Israel started. At that time, the U.S. was not being hit. Our bases, our assets, our other allies were not being struck. It was...
Hang on, let me just do this real fast. It's going to take me 1 second. I just have to enter these codes. And I have to do it before these guards come. 1322. 1322. I'm going to do one more. 3213. 3213. And now I go back up.
It was only Israel. We intervened at the tail end and forced an end to the conflict by bombing Iran and then thereby compelling them into a ceasefire, into a truce with Israel. So in other words, we already lived this. We saw this. We saw the economics. We saw the attritional aspect of it, the resilience of Iran's personnel and equipment, their ability to build lots of ballistic missiles and launch them without Israel meaningfully being able to suppress this capability. Now here we are in the second week, and we've hit Iran way harder than we did last year, way harder. Way more ordnance, more targets, killed more people, destroyed more stuff, destroyed all the big stuff. And yet, just today, Iran bombed the airport in Bahrain. Iran bombed the airport in Kuwait. Iran bombed a bank building in the Emirates.
Yeah, they're making a mess out of everything. I have to wonder, is this dude like reading from a script that he wrote or that AI wrote for him or something? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it, but he's talking so much. I couldn't possibly talk that much unprompted. All right, give me a second. Let me just do this real fast. All right, 1 second. So I should be able to enter 4324. 4324. Oop, I better go back up. Give it a second here. And the blue guard coming. All right. No, I think I have 2 more codes. 2122. 2122. I'm going to stay and do one more. 3223. 3223. Awesome. Back up. Wait, do I have to do more codes? I'm waiting for the blue. What? Red's coming now? I'll go after red. Okay. One more, presumably. 2241. 2241. Do I have one more? I think I do. I'm just going to wait. All right. I maybe shouldn't have done that. 1113. 1113. Oh my God. Input error. Did not mean to do that. All right. 1 second. 1311. 1311. There we are. Okay. I think that's the last code I had to enter.
And this is having a huge effect on the oil. Like I said, they bombed 3 ships in the Persian Gulf, so they're choking off the oil. And it's also deeply affecting the Persian Gulf countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council. All these other economies are built on investment, tourism, high net worth individuals, their capital markets, their specialized banking services for developing nations. And many people are now reporting on this, that all of these oil-rich Gulf countries, they were trying to effectively rebrand as modern hubs. We used to think of the Middle East as a barbaric place where this population pyramid of exploding birth rates, very young Muslims were becoming extremely radical and causing terrorism, and they're very low IQ, and so it's creating political instability. That is what we thought about the Gulf maybe 25 years ago.
It is? Is that what we thought about the Gulf 25 years ago? Okay.
In the intervening decades, the Gulf has rebranded. Think Dubai, think Qatar, think Formula One and WWE in Saudi Arabia. They have rebranded as an entertainment, tourism, banking.
That's fair enough. They have.
Finance hub. Well, that doesn't really work if you're getting hit with ballistic missiles at a resort. It doesn't help your image if you've got billionaire businessmen and you've got extremely niche banking services, and these buildings and airports are literally being bombed. They're being bombarded every day by suicide drones and medium and short range ballistic missiles. It doesn't work. So in other words, Iran has forced us into an unwinnable situation. We can't do regime change. It's impossible unless we escalate, unless we engage in a ground war. Otherwise, it's off the table. And if we can't do regime change, we can't stop the missiles, because we can't bomb them into regime change. We can't bomb all the missiles. So the only way to stop the missiles is to kill the people that are firing them and get new people that don't want to launch them. That's off the table. So they say, well, we'll bomb all the missiles. You can't. There's too many of them. The country's too big. There's Zerg.
I'm honestly not even worried about the missiles so much as the fact that they have such a gigantic fucking army. Seriously, like, do not underestimate how gigantic that army is.
Rushing us. It's impossible. You can't destroy all of it. You destroy some of it, they build more of it. You bomb one target, they've already moved the missile somewhere else. You kill one guy, there's another guy ready to take his place, and he's angrier. He's pissed off because he liked the other guy. He liked the first guy. And in the meantime, as the days drag on, the economic situation, it compounds. It gets worse all the time. If we can't topple the regime, if we can't stop the missiles, then that means the strait is closed, the energy doesn't flow. The energy doesn't flow, it strangles the global energy market. It increases prices everywhere. It causes panic. And there's a contagion effect. It affects everybody. There's animal spirits involved in this too. Panic sets in.
Animal spirits? What the hell does that mean? Oh, shit. I'm sorry. My title is still about Doge. I completely forgot to fix the title on Twitch. You're right about that. Let me fix that. Hold on. I'll fix it right now.
That's why when the Trump administration releases oil from the strategic reserve, it makes the situation worse. You might say, how does increasing the supply of oil make the price of oil higher? Trump unloaded 270 million barrels of oil from the strategic reserves. You would think that would ameliorate the supply shock because we've replaced the supply, so the price should stabilize. It actually causes the opposite effect because Wall Street is watching and Japan is watching and Europe is watching. And what they see is that we have unloaded all the supplies because it's a crisis and there's no end in sight. And the pain is acute and is ongoing. So if we release it, we're communicating we have a big problem. So people are going to bet that oil will remain high for the foreseeable future. It drives up the price, actually.
I actually saw somebody say recently it was a Trump supporter, they're unhappy about the fact that we went into Venezuela and took all of their oil, but we are still paying high gas prices. Not even realizing that, first of all, that's their fucking oil that we have no right to. And second, the Iran war is what's causing it to be high now. Boy, doesn't it suck for those shitheads that bet on oil to go down? Do you remember that? They bet oil would go down immediately after we invaded Venezuela, or I guess the United States invaded Venezuela. And now they're all fucked. I guess, it's their own stupidity for doing that.
Actually, in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, they're cutting production. Their storage is full. So they literally have to shut down the refineries. They have to shut down the oil industry because the oil has nowhere to go. They could start pumping it into these new pipelines they built in the Emirates and the East-West pipeline in Saudi Arabia. But who's to say Iran doesn't bomb that too? So maybe they're worried about using it. They've never used it to its full capacity. And then what's more, all these countries, in addition to the oil crunch and the revenue they're not getting, all these countries are also being strangled because nobody wants to live there right now. Nobody wants to visit there. Nobody's going to invest in their capital markets in the long term because they don't want to have to make a stop over into a city that's being bombed by Iran every single day. So we are in an unwinnable situation. It gets worse all the time. And in particular, it gets bad for Trump because Trump needs to win the election. And so you have this global energy crisis. It's going to cause a global economic crisis.
It's already starting. It has already started to cause a massive energy crisis. It's insane. So fucking stupid what's going on. And it's pointless. There is absolutely no reason for this.
Time drags on, it gets worse. And as time drags on, we get closer to the midterm elections. So what does that mean? It means two things. You're either going to, one, get an escalation. What's the solution? Well, if we can't stop them because we can't bomb them into regime change, well, what's the obvious next step? What's the obvious escalatory step? Well, we could always do other things that will facilitate a regime change. We could always invade. And so that's option one, is if we're not winning the war, if the bombs aren't working, and if the pain is that bad, well, then we'll send in the armed forces and we'll invade and we'll force the regime to come down. I think you know why that's not politically tenable, but that's something that Trump has said he's considering. Pete Hegseth said the same thing. They could always go in that direction. They could go up. The other direction is you back off and you leave. Well, how do you do that? If you create a truce or a ceasefire and you tell the Iranians, we're going to stop bombing you, will you please stop bombing us? Maybe you bring China in on this. China needs the oil. China's being hurt by the energy crunch. They want to stabilize the Middle East. And China is maybe Iran's most important partner. So maybe the U.S. and China get together at the trade talks in Europe this week, and we tell China that we'll get Israel to back off if China gets Iran to back off, and we could call the quits. We could say it's a truce. We could say it's a ceasefire. Iran will stop bombing the Persian Gulf. They'll stop bombing the Gulf, the GCC countries, and we'll get Israel to stop bombing Iran. The only problem with the de-escalation approach is that how do we do this without losing face? Because in the event that we de-escalate, we need a narrative. Because what we said, again, from the outset...
You usually need a narrative to start a war. And I don't know if you guys were around at the time, but I was very, very young. And I remember Bush saying, we needed to defend our homeland by invading Iraq. That Iraq was building weapons of mass destruction, exactly as they're saying regarding Iran. And they even brought a vial of yellow cake uranium to the House floor as a prop. They said, see this? This is what Iraq is manufacturing. Even though, they were pretending that, they got it from Iraq or something when they didn't. They didn't have weapons of mass destruction the whole time, but they lied us into that war. They whipped people into a blood frenzy and got people in the national intelligence community to say this is real and that they really are building weapons of mass destruction. We really must stop them. And it was so successful that even Hillary Clinton voted in favor of the war in Iraq. And she was not on the right. A lot of people voted for it who otherwise wouldn't have. That none of that happened with Iran. There was none of that buildup. There was none of that lying or working people into a blood frenzy. They need a reason to get out. They didn't have a reason to get in.
Is we want regime change, and that's what we want, and that's what we're going to get because we run the show and we're the number one power. Well, what happens after 2 weeks? We threw everything at them and they're still standing. Well, now we look like a paper tiger.
Yep. That's why you only strike when you absolutely know for sure that you can win. And it has to be quick.
That message reverberates all around the world. And the message is the U.S. is not as powerful as it thinks it is. Its deterrent credibility is undermined. We made a threat. Iran did not back down, and we couldn't back it up.
Iran didn't back down. What the fuck does that even mean? What were they asking for? They made a deal in 2015 that was really, really good to guarantee they would not get nuclear weapon. What do you mean they wouldn't back down?
We signed a check that we couldn't cash. And so now every other country will realize we should adopt the Iran model. We should have a native drone industry. We should buy ballistic missiles. We should buy Iranian drones. Everybody's watching very closely, and they're taking notes about this. Iran, too. Iran itself. they become actually the strategic victor because they thwarted the U.S. objectives, even though they are absolutely weakened, even though they are significantly diminished and vulnerable. In a way, it's a strategic victory because they have reestablished deterrence.
Absolutely.
The message is communicated that you tried it. You tried to knock us off and you failed and it backfired. We defended ourselves. We're still here. You went in for the kill shot and you missed. The supreme leader is dead. Well, we'll call him a martyr and we'll appoint his son to pursue vengeance. You bombed our missile launch platforms. Well, we bombed your precious oil and we control the energy trade. We vetoed the global economy. That's what they'll say. We let oil flow to China.
And they'll be right when they say it.
Through the strait unmolested. But we refused your oil. We control the global oil market. We control the global economy. You fuck with us, we put our finger on the button and we shut the whole thing down.
There was a way the United States could have come out of this victorious, and they didn't. Because they're fucking idiots in the Trump administration. Because they don't know what they're doing. Because they're going off half-cocked doing this stuff.
You'll think twice next time. That's the message. And it rallies the people to the regime. So if there was any idea in the Western imagination that the Iranian people had this aspiration for liberal democracy and feminism and OnlyFans, and they want to be free of Islamic theocracy, or they don't want sovereignty, well, what effect does this have? If the United States is absolutely bombing the shit out of your country and your government valiantly and bravely defends your people, well, that increases support for that government.
You know what I just realized? I think I forgot to get the magical lamp. I think I forgot the magical lamp, which is a game changer. I have to start the game over. No, I got it. I just forgot to use it, apparently. Okay. Jesus, that's comforting. All right.
The U.S. is dropping thousands of bombs on Iran, literally causing a Category 7 earthquake. A 7.0 magnitude earthquake in Tehran, maybe dropping bunker buster bombs on their capital city. Thousands of Iranians are dead. Hundreds of school children were killed in the first strike. You killed their leader. And if Iran defiantly appoints that guy's son and says, he was a martyr, we're pursuing revenge, we're going to defend our nation. And if they succeed, what does that do other than endear people to the regime? What does that do other than actually create a rallying effect? And the population coalesces around the regime. Probably this is the greatest IRGC recruiting ad ever. Whereas Hamas is destroyed, Hezbollah is destroyed, Jordan's a bitch, the Saudis are a bitch, all these countries are a bitch to Israel. I'll just throw in Qatar and the Emirates so you don't think I'm paid off. The Emirates and Qatar are bitches, they're defenseless. Iran stood alone. That's leadership. That's leadership for its neighbors. That's leadership for its people. So that's a strategic victory. How does the United States walk away from the fight without that happening?
They don't. It's just like with Russia and Ukraine. They played their hand, and a 2-week military operation turned into a 3+ year war that they're barely winning. The slowest moving war in history, maybe. I think they're gaining like 3 inches of ground per month or something like that. I forget what it adds up to. If they were moving any slower, they'd be moving backwards.
They can't really. And this is where you enter the latest statements from Trump and Netanyahu. Trump comes out today, or I should say a couple days ago, and he says, we won. He said, we won. We destroyed all their equipment. We destroyed their navy. We killed their leader. So we won. I'm claiming victory. It's over. Mission accomplished. That's what we set out to do. Now, obviously, that's a lie. Because what they said is that they want regime change at the beginning. They didn't get it. They didn't get what they wanted. They can't get what they want. So now they're just finessing it And they're saying, well, what we really meant is that we only want to destroy their military and go home. We don't even want to destroy all their missiles. We don't even want to destroy their nukes. We don't even want regime change. All we wanted was these little other victories that we got. And that is Trump looking for an off-ramp. That's Trump looking for a way out. That's a way for him to reframe it so he can claim victory. And it's bluster. It's obviously fake, but that's something that they need to say. The obvious question, however, and this is what I said a few days ago, is, well, what about Netanyahu?
Trump came out today, or should I say a few days ago. Proof he wrote the script a few days ago. Yeah, I would say that. I didn't even catch that. That's a good point. Interesting. So he must be following a script then, right? It was kind of hard to tell if he was like following a script or if he... There's no way. Maybe an outline. Maybe he writes an outline or something.
Because again, Trump, our strategic interest from America's point of view is we want to prevent Iran from getting a nuke. And we want to prevent Iran from disrupting the global energy trade. And nice job doing that. But we don't necessarily need a regime change. We just need a compliant regime. We don't need the regime to be forcibly, violently removed. We just need them to work with us a little bit. Now, does degrading their military maybe get them to make a deal? Maybe Trump was convinced of this, that he could go in hard and fast, blow up a lot of their shit, go home, and then say, hey, well, mission accomplished, and now maybe the Iranians will make a deal because they don't want to face our wrath again. But Israel is the outstanding variable. They are still the uncertainty because Israel does want a regime change. For them, that's non-negotiable. For them, they want regime change in itself.
Unfortunately, Israel is out of their fucking minds right now. Like, there was a video going around a while back, I don't know, a couple months ago maybe, of Israeli, like, IDF soldiers brutally raping a kid, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to... All right, here, let me see. Let me just pull this information up so I don't get it wrong. Hold on. Hang on. Okay. This is from July 2024, but it just had another update recently. The IDF arrested 9 reservists connected to the alleged rape and abuse of a Palestinian prisoner at the Sti Teman military detention facility. 5 of them were ultimately indicted in February 2025. One former detainee described the assault lasting over 20 minutes, during which guards laughed, and one appeared to be filming. After the assault, the victim received no medical treatment and reportedly bled from his rectum for more than 3 weeks. I understand that they did actually provide medical care eventually, and they had to completely reconstruct his insides. And they became heroes. There was video of this from the facility, like facility cameras. And they became heroes, these people. Like, these rapists became heroes in the Israeli kind of culture or whatever. And were just acquitted. Far-right nationalists stormed 2 military facilities to protest the soldiers' detention. A Likud lawmaker openly defended the alleged abuse at a Knesset meeting, which is like their Congress, shouting yes when asked if it was legitimate to insert a stick into a prisoner's rectum. adding that if he's a Hamas militant, everything is legitimate. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir called the accused soldiers our best heroes, while Finance Minister Smotrich called them heroic warriors. Smotrich even demanded an investigation into who leaked the video, not to seek accountability, but to find and punish the leaker. March 12th, I'm sorry, there's a loud truck outside. Give it a second. March 12th, 2026, the IDF dismissed all indictments on March 12th. The IDF spokesperson cited the complexity of the evidentiary basis and the fact that the prisoner had been released to Gaza, which they claimed created significant consequences for the evidentiary aspect, quote unquote. Netanyahu welcomed the dismissal, saying the prosecution had damaged Israel's reputation in the world in an unprecedented manner. He and President Katz both labeled the prosecution a blood libel. Rights groups responded. The Public Committee Against Torture in Israel stated that the dismissal adds to a long series of decisions and actions taken by the army which cover up the violent violations that have occurred in Israeli prisons and detention facilities increasingly since October 7th, 2023. They are fucking evil. The people in Israel are fucking evil right now. Unforgivable. Unforgivably evil, these people. It's horrifying what these people are doing, what they're willing to do, and the things they're willing to cover up. Talk about the Epstein files. Like, this is up there. By the way, that's the type of shit that Epstein did to people, just an FYI. And nobody, like, they're literally celebrating that these people were dismissed or their charges were dismissed. Fucking evil.
They don't want regime change to make Iran more compliant. They don't want regime change so Iran will not pursue a nuke. They want regime change because they don't want an Islamist anti-Israel government in place. So that was always the question. Will Israel and elements inside the Republican Party and inside the Trump White House, will they allow Trump?
Yeah, let me grab something. 1 second. I'm going to let this play for a second. Hold on.
To walk away from the disaster to cut his losses because Israel's not done yet. And that is what was reported the other day, is that there's a divergence in the two policies. That Israel wants the war to go on after the United States exits because Israel still is not satisfied because they have different goals here. Well, the big story from today is that Netanyahu gave a speech this evening and he basically conceded we're not getting regime change and it's not going to happen. And that means perhaps that he is assenting to President Trump's off-ramp. He has given permission for the United States to exit the conflict. Trump said on Monday, well, we want it to be over. It's going to be over soon. We're almost done. And he's effectively communicating, this is hurting us more than we're hurting them. We got to leave. If Netanyahu comes out this evening and says, we might not get regime change, and that's okay. That's his way of telling us we have permission to finish. And this is from the Times of Israel. It says, quote, Prime Minister Netanyahu admitted on Thursday that he was not certain the Iranian people would bring down the Islamic Republic once Israel and the U.S. create the conditions for them to do so. He said, you can lead someone to water, you cannot make them drink.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let's just step back and continue.
To walk away from the disaster to cut his losses because Israel's not done yet. And that is what was reported the other day, is that there's a divergence in the two policies. That Israel wants the war to go on after the United States exits because Israel still is not satisfied because they have different goals here. Well, the big story from today is that Netanyahu gave a speech this evening and he basically conceded we're not getting regime change and it's not going to happen. And that means perhaps that he is assenting to President Trump's off-ramp. He has given permission for the United States to exit the conflict. Trump said on Monday, well, we want it to be over. It's going to be over soon. We're almost done. And he's effectively communicating, this is hurting us more than we're hurting them. We got to leave. If Netanyahu comes out this evening and says, we might not get regime change, and that's okay. That's his way of telling us we have permission to finish. And this is from the Times of Israel. It says, quote, Prime Minister Netanyahu admitted on Thursday that he was not certain the Iranian people would bring down the Islamic Republic once Israel and the U.S. create the conditions for them to do so. He said, you can lead someone to water, you cannot make them drink. Regarding the potential for regime change, Netanyahu told reporters, we will create the optimal conditions to do this, including airstrikes, as we did yesterday, as we are doing these days, to try to give the Iranian people the space needed to take to the streets. We are delivering crushing blows to the IRGC and the besieged, their street forces, checkpoints, and more is yet to come. Nevertheless, he said, quote, I do not deny it. I cannot say for certain that the Iranian people will bring down the regime. We told them, help is on the way. Well, the help has come and more will follow. We are all hoping for the result of this regime falling. Ultimately, a regime is ousted from within. However the conflict plays out, Netanyahu asserted the Islamic Republic is already weakened. He said it's simply a different Iran. It no longer threatens as it did before.
It didn't threaten in the first fucking place.
He said it is not the same power, it is not the giant bully that nothing can be done against and that no one can unite against.
What the fuck are they talking about?
So he seems to be admitting the same thing that Trump is, which is we're not going to topple the regime. We opened up a window of opportunity for the people, but they're not taking it and they haven't taken it. He says, however, here is our consolation prize. At least we weakened Iran. At least we degraded their capabilities. And now we've demonstrated that Iran is not untouchable. And obviously that is not what they set out to achieve, but that is their way of finessing it and reframing it so that the two countries can claim victory. And so that sounds to me like maybe we will get a truce. Maybe we will get a ceasefire. Maybe peace will break out. I think that one of two things happens. One, you get a false flag. You get an Iranian sleeper cell that does an unbelievable terrorist attack and hundreds or thousands die. It's a mass casualty event, and that galvanizes the American public and the Europeans and maybe even the Gulf countries to actually invade Iran, and we're in a multi-year war. That's option number one. And that's how you get your regime change. Option number two, they don't give up on regime change. That's not in the cards. But what they might do is a temporary truce, a temporary ceasefire. We replenish our ammunition. We replenish our munitions, stockpiles, weapon systems. Maybe we involve other coalition partners, whether that's the Kurds or the Gulf or the Europeans or somebody else. We get a new coalition together, and then we sow the seeds on the ground for a revolution. CIA, Mossad is active in the country.
Not gonna happen. That's insane. I'm not convinced there's gonna be an attack on U.S. soil. That would be the stupidest thing Iran could possibly do. Although I don't put it past anybody to do stupid shit.
They're getting anti-government forces organized and mobilized. And then in 2027, you get the once and for all regime change operation. We try it again. I think those are the only two options. I think regime change is inevitable. I think that ultimately Iran is going to go. That's what Israel wants. What Israel wants, Israel gets. And unless some kind of black swan event occurs, unless something very strange happens, it seems that we are on an inexorable trajectory towards an Iranian regime change. It's just a question of what the timeline is. Will we get it now or will we get it later? Will we get a ground war with American forces hastily put together in order to save face, not to back down, and we get the regime change now and we're now in a multi-year conflict? Or do we wind it down, we get some space to breathe, chance to catch our breath, and then we go back in a year after we've made additional preparations and maybe we get a better opportunity. Now, the only problem with the latter is that in the interceding time, Iran is going to be able to build more missiles. So look, let's say you get a truce and a ceasefire. Why would Iran stop? They're kind of winning this. Well, they might stop if China asks them to, and maybe they'll stop if they have some assurance.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is Iran doing that they're supposed to stop?
That we will stop bombing them. Okay, so we get a truce. Well, weeks will pass, months will pass, and what is Iran going to do? They will seek vengeance. They will build more missiles. They will try to. And what is Israel going to say? They're going to say Iran is building their missiles again. They're undoing the work that we've done. We mowed the grass, it's growing back. And so will Israel then try to initiate more strikes on Iran very soon?
They will always try to destroy Iran. Do you know why? Because Israel wants to control that region, that whole region.
Surely there will be a tripwire. Unlike Lebanon or Syria, Iran could simply close the strait again. It's not like these other countries where you can just have open reign over the airspace. Iran is able to actually hurt the United States. So it's not going to be like Syria where you just go in and bomb them when you feel threatened, when you feel like it. There will have to be a durable peace. But within months, Israel anyway is going to claim, look, they built their missile arsenal back. Think about it. The midterms are in November. Could you foresee that in 8 months, Israel will say, Iran has had 8 months. If you do the math, that means they built 2,500 more missiles, and they're all pointed at Saudi Arabia and Israel and Al Udeid and Erbil and all the other bases. They're going to...
Like, we had a deal with Iran. Why can't we just leave them alone? Why is it so fucking difficult to just leave them alone? Move on with your life, do your thing, don't worry about what they're up to.
Ask for another war again, because this is what we're involved in. It's like I said last year. You bomb Iran once, you're in it for good. You've been drawn in. You've bought it. You have skin in the game now. By hitting Iran once, it makes negotiations that much less likely. Once bitten, Iran is going to actually entrench its offensive and defensive capabilities. They're going to build more of them because they know they're threatened. They know they're under the gun. So we bombed them last year. Now they don't want to talk. Also, they're going to build a shit ton more missiles because they know they're going to need them. And if they're building more missiles and they're not talking, it means Israel's going to beg us to hit them again. Now that brings us to today. We bomb their missiles. It makes negotiations less likely in the future, and Iran's going to build more missiles after we get a peace. So that's why even in the latter scenario, you might think this is a taco. Oh, Trump is chickening out again. Oh, this is the end. Oh, I guess it wasn't so bad. The boots never hit the ground.
Though they did. We have 5,000 Marines in there right now.
Just like last year. Yeah, they haven't hit the ground yet. People said last year, oh, it's a 2-week war. No big deal. All we did was drop a couple of bombs and that was it. Until the next time we bomb Iran. And what are they going to say now? Oh, well, look, all we did was bomb Iran 3,000 times. We never dropped any boots on the ground. Yeah, until the next time we bomb Iran. And then we're going to bomb them again. And people are going to say, well, that was... Until eventually we get the regime change. And I don't know how we get out of this without a false flag. Because there is no appetite for this war. Nobody wants it.
Right, 100%.
American public opinion will have to turn. There is no Iranian opposition. There's nothing viable there. So it seems that will have to be manufactured at some point to get us to go to war. That's the morbid reality. That is the morbid dynamic that we're engaged in. And that's it. And that is our coverage of the Iran war tonight.
Well, I think that was pretty on point. I think that was pretty insightful. For a neo-Nazi, he sees things pretty clearly sometimes. The problem is that with Nick Fuentes, he sees things clearly a lot of the time. It's just he's starting from a position of I'm a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist, and I will do everything I can to enact that vision, that world. He's less propagandized and more just an ideological extremist.
Not great.
Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I wanted to watch something else. Hold on. Let me rename it. Nick Fuentes. And then a couple other videos I wanted to pull up here. Hold on 1 second.
And I stand with Israel. I stand with what God is doing in the earth. And the Bible.
I'm just looking at some of these clips here.
Not be by the hands of men and those who seek to destroy at this time, but this that I do with my reset will cause men to be shaken to the very core, will cause the earth to shake just a little bit more, and the mountains will erupt, and storms will
erupt. What does that mean? Is that how Scooby-Doo says erupt? They will erupt?
a little bit more, and the mountains will erupt, and storms will seek to arise, but they will be held back because of the power that I have come to reset the earth. That you will say, what is this? Has the earth gone quiet?
What the fuck is he saying? Let me jump forward a bit here.
For as my justice comes,
He's prophesying right now.
it does not matter who they have appointed. It does not matter who they have pardoned. It does not matter who they have platformed, positioned, seated.
He is just a ridiculous human being. Let me just pull up a couple of clips here. Let's see. Just a second. How many clips do I need for Fireside? Wednesday, 4, 5, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Okay. Let's talk about a couple of these subjects here. Let's hit Hank Kunneman, because he's like a deeply ridiculous, entertaining, insane character. We just download these videos, and then we're going to talk about Kunneman. And then we might watch Marjorie Taylor Greene talk smack about Trump. Oh, yeah, and there was also the Iran war with Tucker. I forgot about that. Let me just pull that up right here. Yes. Awesome. And I'm downloading and processing the Hank Kunneman videos. All legal, like. Yeah, legal. We'll do it on your terms, motherfuckers. All right, here we go. Hank Kunneman. Jesus comparison justifies private jet donation request.
A lot of times people say that
Here we go. All right. What's this one? This is calls for silencing political opponent. All right. This is Hank Kunneman. I don't know if you're familiar with this dude, but he says he's a prophet of God. Just give this a listen.
a lot of times people say that America is divided. I don't believe that America really is divided 50-50 on a lot of these issues that, you know, they're spouting off their mouth about. I really believe that we're like in 1 Kings 18. We're caught between opinions. And it's going to take a moment.
What the fuck does that mean if not divided?
For us to stand up. And the first thing Elijah did is repair the altar of the Lord, brought God into the scene. And after the prophets of Baal were doing the exact same thing, shooting off their mouth, right? Acting all crazy, prophesying. That's what those people were doing. Oh, Trump when he's gone and all this and that. But then all of a sudden there was a moment where the altar was repaired, prayer, that's what it represents, and
I think he was talking about people who are saying, when Trump is gone, we're going to repair the country. And he's trying to turn them into, he's trying to make it a religious thing. Instead of people just saying, we're going to repair the country after Trump is gone. He's trying to make them into false prophets. And he's the only real prophet, you see.
and there was a moment where the altar was repaired, prayer, that's what it represents, and God came down and began to take out the false. And Jesus even had to do it. Luke 4:35, he had to tell the devil, shut up and come out. And what you're hearing is you're hearing demonic chatter, and it's time for us who love God and love our country, love our children, love morals, love sanity.
This dude claims to love morals and sanity and everything else. Please.
We need to say to people like that, shut up and come out. In other words, you are not the voice of our present. You're not the voice of our future. And we're going to see to it as we rally behind God and what he wants to do in this country.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. He needs help. Seriously. Listen to this one from him. Not only is he completely detached from reality, but he's also a scam artist to the absolute core.
I said, I'm going to have Amy call. I'm going to charter a jet. Because I am so dedicated to God, and I am so dedicated to you, the people.
Did he pretend to start crying just now?
And I am dedicated to the United States of America and to fight for it. I said, Brenda, I feel like I'm supposed to be there at all costs. I know we're paying a lot of money here, but Brenda, I am pressed. It's like, you know, where the Bible says
Brenda is his wife.
Jesus was pressed to go to Jerusalem. I felt pressed that I have to do this. I don't need another thing to do. That's not why I do it. It's because I'm trying to be obedient alongside of you and with you. And if you know me, there's no quit in me. I haven't quit. I keep pressing. So I chartered a flight, but thank you. It's very expensive.
I chartered a flight. He's saying he got a private jet, or he got a flight on a private jet. And he says it's very expensive, so you have to give me more money.
And yes, I loved it. I got there, and I was able to do Thursday night and then Friday morning, then fly back. And I was very appreciative. Folks, we got to get a travel fund together. I went before God. And
Bro, this is so transparently scam artist shit, right? Is he not scamming people out of every penny they fucking own? And these gullible fools are falling for it and donating. Jesus Christ.
And I said, Lord, just give me a scripture so that I can share with the people something out of the word that is true, that I can share with them, that sometimes a minister does have to have, watch this now, a travel plan and a travel vehicle that's dependable. Last few...
And that justifies a Mercedes, right? Or a Cadillac. A travel vehicle that's dependable. You know Hank Kunneman isn't driving around a Camry.
Times I've tried to make trips, they haven't been dependable. And
so I need a $150,000 car for dependable reasons, you see.
I almost could not get back here in time, or I get stuck, something gets delayed. How many know the story there? But I want to show you Mark chapter 3, verse 9 out of the NIV. Notice what Jesus instructed. Or no, it's NLT, excuse me. Jesus instructed his disciples to what? Have a boat, what? So the crowd would not crush him. So even Jesus was concerned about going to certain ports and airports.
Bro, are you kidding me? The Bible talks about Jesus preparing ahead of time for them to have a boat ready for him so the crowd won't crush him. And Hank Kunneman twists that into, I need to own a private jet. I need to own a Mercedes.
And things. He had to have smarts because of where his ministry was at.
Just bottom of the barrel, vile, dirty shit. What is wrong with this piece of shit? Seriously. I have another clip about this dude. Let me find it. Hold on. some. Wait.
Why is God taking...
What? Just a second. Democratic mayor. Venezuela oil. Christian. Yeah, here's another one from Hank Kunneman. I'm sorry for the strong language, but I feel it's necessary to give you an idea of what kind of a person this dude is.
Well, see, Pastor Hank, Jesus did not go around and, upset anyone. Yes, he did.
Okay, I don't know anybody, not one human being, who has ever said Jesus didn't go around upsetting people. Jesus overturned the natural order of things. Obviously, he changed the way everything operates, and that upset a lot of people. Yes, clearly. But that's not what he means when he says upset, quote unquote. He means he believes Jesus used slurs against people.
He turned over tables. He took a whip, fashioned it all night, went into the temple more than once.
By the way, that's Hitler's favorite Bible verse right there. The one about Jesus fashioning a whip and then whipping the shit out of the Jews in the temple. It's in John.
Cleansed the temple. I guarantee you somebody was probably in the crosshairs of those whips, turning over the tables. I'm sure one of them probably had one of those tables fall on their foot. How about when he told the disciples and the people, said, hey, by the way, go tell Herod, okay, who was in government. Well,
so he just justified violence by saying, I guarantee one of those tables fell on someone's foot. He's saying violence is acceptable, political violence. And now he's talking about a political leader, Herod, and basically saying things are justified. Violence is justified against political figures, is what he's saying.
Jesus, we're supposed to stay out of politics. Why don't you act like Jesus? We're supposed to do what he did. He said, go tell Herod the fox. Now, that word fox was not, oh, go tell that sly guy. No, literal translation of sly fox is basically someone who is bisexual.
No, it's not, but okay.
I've heard some people use the word faggot, that it literally meant to call out Herod's sexual immorality. And
he's looking for a reason to use slurs against people, right? That was the whole point there, wasn't it? This dude is a vile piece of shit. And the shit that he says is unforgivable. The shit that he does, the extremism he promotes, unforgivable. And people like him are going to face consequences when Trump is gone. Legal consequences.
Lifestyle as a bisexual human being leader. And Jesus involved himself. He was not afraid to speak up.
Just disgusting. Disgusting shit. Let me watch one more. Check this one out.
And I will reveal the true list. And I will reveal those who have touched the children, for they will be given a voice.
Donald Trump? You're going to reveal Donald Trump for who he is? Is that what you're saying?
And it is not whom you think.
Well, who do I think?
And there are those children that were raised among very high political, influential rulers, governors, entertainers, who you have thought that they were the guardians and the parents
of their children. But it was a lie. Perverse. Messed. The children shall speak, and they will say, this is and was not my father. And this one is not my mother. And this one is not of the gender you think.
And this one is not of the gender you think. I believe he's saying that Obama's wife was actually a man and that Obama is guilty of treason. Hang on, let me find another. Let's see. Here's another good one from Hank Kunneman.
I'm telling you, I've seen way too much that I haven't talked about, but I'm telling you, that day is about to come where some of the things that you thought, like that's really Biden, okay? All right, come on. You know, there's a lot of things that's going to come out. I know I just shocked you, but, you know, God said
Biden's a clone, confirmed.
from the very start, and that's on record, and I got attacked by the secular media. It was the next day after the 2020 election when the devil appeared to me in that vision, and it was at 4:45, and God said there'll be 4 more years for 45. How many remember that? Yep. And the devil appeared and he was talking about all the things he was going to do, and I saw this face of this Biden guy change 2 to 3 times. How remember that? How many have you seen 2 or 3 different versions of this guy, right? One with a big turkey gobble, and then it disappears, right? And it's out again for Thanksgiving. And
I swear to God, it is so fucking weird how these people view the world around them.
he's also 6'5", and the other guy, he grows, you know, from 6'5" to like 5'11". And here's the thing. God said the next day, and I have a video to prove it. You can go out there and see it. God said you're to say 46 does not exist.
Absolutely insane and shameful and embarrassing that somebody like this is in U.S. politics, is so personally involved in it, is so high up that I believe that he knows Trump personally and has prayed over him and all kinds of shit. Disgusting. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. All right, let's watch this. I think we were roughly right here. I'm just going to jump in. Let's see. I have timestamps. Let's start at 11:40. 11:40. 10, 11:40. Yeah. All right, here we go. Tucker Carlson had a conversation with Piers Morgan about the Iran war, and it was apparently pretty fascinating. Let's give it a listen.
Photograph with him. You met him, I think, maybe 3 times in the months leading up to this war, and I presume you discussed the potential for war in Iran with him. You know, did you try and persuade him that this would be a terrible idea?
Of course, that's why I went 3 times in a month, 5 weeks maybe. Yeah, that's why I went, and I've known him a long time, as you have, and always gotten along with him. Still get along with him. I still like him. I'll always like him, no matter
Talking about Donald Trump, I think.
what happens. Just because I like him as a guy, and I think he's trying his best. But in this case, you know, I couldn't have an effect. I tried sincerely. I wasn't getting paid for it. It's coming, of course, at some reputational cost. You know, no one wants to deal with being called a Nazi.
Oh, please, dude, give it a rest. Tucker is a Nazi, first of all. And second, what reputational damage is he facing by opposing the Iran war?
Screamed at or threatened, or having your kids threatened, which has happened to me a lot. And no one wants to deal with that. But I just felt that this was so serious that it was worth doing whatever I could, because, my gosh, you know, people could die. The balance of power globally could change. I've never supported the idea of an American empire, but we have one, and it's in retreat, but there's a way to manage that that's not damaging or profoundly damaging to the United States, the country that I actually live in, that I was born in. And this is not the way. Wars accelerate trends in progress. They bring massive and unexpected change. Every war does this. It's the nature of war. The second people start dying, all kinds of things you never anticipated will happen. And you can't control them. You lose control of the process. I've covered wars. I've certainly watched a lot, read about a lot. I'm not an expert, but I try to apply obvious lessons through history to present-day realities. And that was the first thing I said to the president and anyone else who would listen. Once this starts, the world is going to find out exactly how strong we are.
Absolutely. He's correct here. This is why you only play your hand when you have no other choice. Because maybe we're not that strong. And you know what part of strength is? Part of strength is your forward planning abilities. And Donald Trump is very bad at forward planning and has hired people to work in the military who are also very bad at forward planning. So he's going to, or let me rephrase, has already made a fool out of the United States and tipped our hand, and now we look like weak, idiotic paper tigers. Good fucking job. I hope you're happy with yourself.
Which is not something you necessarily want to reveal. An implied threat is much more effective. In other words, like, you know, if we're squaring off for a fight and you look huge, you've been lifting a lot.
And then you punch like a bitch. Nobody is afraid of you anymore.
I'm afraid of you, but I don't really know what you're capable of until I hit you or you hit me. And then we find out. And maybe it turns out you have no heart, you know, and you lose. I mean, war is kind of the great reveal. And you don't necessarily want to go there, especially if you've ruled the world without question for 80 years and your capabilities have never really been tested. You haven't fought a big country really since 1953 when the Chinese entered the Korean War. So, like, you don't really know what you're capable of and you don't really want to find out. Let's not find out. How's that? But I lost. So, as you can see.
Did you, when you were talking to him, Tucker, did you get a sense that he was on the fence about it, that he was potentially persuadable, or did you feel that he was minded to do it, notwithstanding what you were trying to persuade him to the otherwise?
Well, this was over the course of a month, and that included, so I went there three times, but I, you know, also talked by phone a bunch, and with him about this. And a lot of other people did too. You know, to advocate for it. You know, a lot of people. I don't think many people within the White House were advocating for it. Is my sense. Not that I would really know. I don't work there, but my sense is there weren't a lot of cabinet secretaries saying, "Oh gosh, we got to have a war with Iran." But there were a number of people from the outside who were all sort of visible. You kind of know who they are, donors and advocates for Israel who were advocating for it. And my sense is his view was started to change, you know. Well, obviously it did because he did it, but at no point did I detect an enthusiasm for it. He didn't seem eager to do it. He didn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. That sounds fair. I don't have a problem with that. I don't want anyone to have nuclear weapons. I want Israel to have nuclear weapons. I don't want France to have nuclear weapons. I mean,
I don't think that it's public that Israel has nuclear weapons, but everybody knows that they do. Additionally, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and that's one of the most disturbing things imaginable. Both Pakistan and India have nuclear weapons because they're loose cannons. Those two leaders are. Pakistan built a nuclear weapon covertly, which is very difficult to do. It took them forever to do. And it was like they had to route supply lines through like different areas that weren't being watched. They had to test their munitions in ways that wouldn't be tracked, because anytime somebody gathers the materials for a nuclear weapon, it's obvious. The whole world can see it. Like, you don't need weapons grade uranium for nuclear reactors. There's some materials you need to build a nuclear weapon that aren't needed for literally any other thing. And all of the mines where you can get this stuff are watched, basically. So it was a real feat for Pakistan to build a nuclear weapon in the first place.
you know, That's a pretty reasonable position. But the idea that you would go in into some kind of conflict that could very easily become a ground invasion, or who knows what it becomes, a nuclear exchange, who knows? He was not eager to do that from what I could tell. And again, people tailor their positions to the audience, but I talked to him a lot. And I never one time got the feeling he can't wait to do it. But I also felt, turned out to be correct, that there was an enormous amount of pressure on him, like enormous. I mean, clearly there was an enormous amount of pressure. Where exactly did it come from? It wasn't just from Mark Thiessen of the Washington Post, who was calling a lot to demand more killing. Mark has a lifelong track record of doing that.
Okay, when Tucker calls somebody out like that, I automatically distrust everything he says.
But no one cares what Mark Thiessen thinks. I felt strongly, and I feel strongly now, that there were forces that were forcing him in this direction. And in fact, the Secretary of State, as you said in your intro, admitted as much out loud and said, Netanyahu said, we're going to go first, and you can either watch your assets get destroyed and your people get killed in the Middle East, or you can join us. The question, though, is why at that point...
I thought that was really... Yeah, that was really, I think, a fascinating moment when Marco Rubio said that, because it prompted Antony Blinken, the former Secretary of State, who'd obviously done his job, to then reveal that Netanyahu had tried to pressurize both Biden and Obama into doing the same thing using the same pretext of, we're going to go and do this anyway, are you with us or not? And of course, in both those eventualities, the answer was no.
That is really interesting. I did not hear that. Antony Blinken tried to pressure Obama in the exact same way. Huh.
And Israel didn't attack. I mean, do you think, knowing that from Blinken, do you think Trump may have got played here by Netanyahu?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. Yes, for sure.
Well, I already knew that the Israelis had done that in the previous administration. I knew they did it in 1973 with the Nixon administration, where they threatened to use nuclear weapons against the Arabs and forced Henry Kissinger to okay arms sales to Israel. So there's a long pattern of this. And I think anyone who knows anything about the Israelis knows that they're capable of this. They're capable of great violence. They take their threats very seriously, maybe too seriously, to the point where they become self-fulfilling. I mean, you could argue about it, but they don't mess around. And of course, this had already happened in this administration. In June, our bombing, the 12-day war in Iran began when the Prime Minister of Israel announced to the administration, I'm doing this week.
It doesn't help that Biden was a Zionist, unfortunately. I mean, he was way more measured than other Christian Zionists and enforced rules that wouldn't have existed otherwise, which I can appreciate, but he was still a Zionist.
And my question then, and I raised it, was how about no? How about no? You're a client state. You've got 9 million people. You're the size of New Jersey. You don't make operational decisions. And you certainly don't tell the world's dominant superpower what we're doing next. Like, why would you? That's like getting a lecture from your children. No. And that was my position, because that seems consistent with the laws of nature. The weaker partner doesn't get to dictate terms. Like, what world are we living in? And whatever, I'm not in charge. But that was my position. I think that'd be the position of most rational people. But Israel was in charge of that war. They started it, and they were in charge of this war. They started it. So
they encouraged it, but I'm not sure that they started it.
This is a difficult thing for the people who advocated for the war to deal with, because their whole purpose is not to help the United States. It's to and not even to help Israel. It's to help the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. If you're loyal to Israel, if you love the state of Israel, what do you think about what's happening in Tel Aviv and Haifa right now? They just had, apparently, an Iranian rocket land right next to the Church of the Nativity. Luckily, it didn't do much damage. But this isn't helping Israel. There's no real end game for Israel here that's going to result in its long-term stability and peace. Of course not. This is a disaster for Israel, actually. Not that I really care, because I'm not Israeli, but I don't want to see any country harmed. And these people are in a very tough spot because now we've left the rhetoric stage and we're in the kinetic action stage where the rest of us can just assess outcomes without mediation. Like, who controls the Straits of Hormuz in 3 years? Is there an American military base in Bahrain? What happened to the Fifth Fleet? It used to be there. Where is it now? Who's controlling the energy flows out of the Middle East? These are measurable phenomenon. They're not susceptible to Ben Shapiro being like, wagging his eyebrows at you and telling you you're an anti-Semite. It doesn't matter what he says. And so it puts them in a very tough spot. How do they respond? Well, we know from the Iraq War, not a single person is ever going to admit he was wrong, ever.
Right? I'm sad to say. Well, all the pundits, they have a set of values that they espouse, whether they really mean that or not. So the pundits will never change, but a lot of people start to realize how stupid and ridiculous the Iraq War was.
Ever. One of the most liberating things I've ever done in my life was admit that I was wrong about the Iraq War, and I was ashamed of it. I remain ashamed of it. But once you say I was wrong and I'm sorry, this tremendous weight lifts off your shoulders and you don't have to lie anymore. And that is what liberation actually is. None of these people will do that. None. They feel no compunction and they won't. So instead what they're doing is they're just going bonkers on the attack because, and this is a precept that Israel lives by, the best defense is a strong offense. So rather than like debating you on the terms or admitting that they were wrong in their forecasts and there was no popular uprising in Iran and we've lost control of the world's energy, they're going to say, Piers Morgan, you're a Nazi. Megyn Kelly, you're a Nazi. And you're
Well, again, like, these people are actually Nazis. I'm just saying, like, they're insane. They're unglued from reality, all of them. But that doesn't mean that they're incorrect about their position on the Iran war.
You're just like, what? That is a kind of insulation that they're constructing around themselves to prevent, well, any kind of soul searching about how did I get it so wrong? And all these people died because I was wrong. They don't want to deal with that. But it also allows them just like keep going on to the next war of conquest or the next satanic disaster that they'll back, which they will.
Have you spoken to President Trump since the war began?
I just through proxies.
Don't you love his hilarious laugh? Like a fucking clown.
He called me names or said I was too dumb to understand MAGA or something. I wasn't, from my perspective, a real attack. I can't. I admit my weaknesses up front. Okay, I like pizza, which is wrong. I like Donald Trump, which is increasingly hard to defend, but I do. And
wow, interesting.
I don't anticipate any kind of personal tiff with Trump. I think he was in an impossible spot.
He was not in an impossible spot. It was the same exact spot that he was placed in. I'm sorry, that Biden was placed in, and Biden got out of that spot. So he's just a fucking idiot is the bottom line here.
I think it's very obvious now that the U.S. president, under our current system, which I pray changes soon, doesn't have the latitude that people thought he had. Like, presidents can't just make whatever decision they want in the interest of their country. There are other forces hemming them in. We don't have sovereignty in a real way. Clearly, we don't. If we're following a country of 9 million people into a war that could displace us as the dominant superpower, we don't have sovereignty. I mean, by definition. And I think every president has felt that since John F. Kennedy was murdered. And clearly they all have. And they've acted within it, with wisdom or not, but they're still acting within boundaries that they didn't set, that no American did. And it's just time to change that system, not because you hate Israel or you're anti-Semitic.
I wonder if there's a difference in his mind between murdered and assassinated. Oswald assassinated John F. Kennedy. That's just what it is, okay? I've looked through the files and tried to understand what happened, and I even went on the tour and looked at where all of this stuff was, looked at the grassy knoll and all of it, the whole 9 yards. And I believe he was assassinated by, what's his name? By Oswald. And I don't think any other positions are defensible, really. But the prevailing conspiracy theory is that the CIA assassinated him or murdered him. And I'm wondering if there's a reason he chose the word murdered there instead of assassinated. The fact is, Oswald was communist, if I'm not mistaken, and was doing what he did on behalf of the Soviet Union. And the CIA knew that if that got out, it could cause real problems for people. It could exacerbate the Cold War, make it worse. So they covered it up. And that cover-up made people believe that there was something more to it, that the CIA was responsible for it in some way, when I just don't believe that they were. I just don't. I think it's a little far-fetched.
I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't hate Israel at all. I'm never going to. But that's not the way a sovereign country behaves or should have to behave. And Americans have earned the right to live under a government that makes decisions on their behalf for their benefit. I mean, it's that simple.
What Trump said about you was quite revealing, actually, because he said, Tucker's lost his way. He's not MAGA. MAGA is saving our country. MAGA is making our country great again. MAGA is America first, and Tucker is none of these things.
You know, people believe that they could control Hitler, too. These people always believe that they can control those who they place in power, but it never actually works out that way.
And Tucker's really not smart enough to understand that. Now, having been on the receiving end of Trump's savage rhetoric from time to time, that is pretty low base for him. But it was an interesting point about what constitutes MAGA, because, of course, there are many people with pretty short to mid-term memories who can remember Trump campaigning so vociferously to his MAGA base before the last election on saying, look, we're going to be America first. We're not going to go marching into Middle Eastern countries anymore. We're not going to wage foreign wars. We're not going to interfere in other countries. And we're going to fix the economy in the United States. We're going to get the cost of living prices down. We're going to end inflation. And it seems to me that it might be that President Trump has either forgotten what he said or wants to try and reframe what MAGA really means. Because if you're a MAGA voter, you must be slightly mystified. You may not want to admit it publicly because you think it betrays Trump, but you must be mystified that within a year of winning back the White House, the guy that campaigned on not going into the Middle East again, not waging foreign wars.
It's only mystifying to fucking idiots who didn't see this coming a mile away. Everybody knew that Trump was going to be a war-like president. He's going to start shit with all kinds of people. Everybody knew that. Every single fucking person to the left of hunting the homeless for sport knew that.
Focusing on America first and the US economy has now launched the biggest war in the Middle East in my lifetime that America has waged. And that has inevitably sparked the biggest economic meltdown we've seen as a consequence of a war, not least because, as you said, about the Strait of Hormuz and the damage that is inflicting, and the simultaneous attacks on the Gulf states and all the fallout from that. So it seems to me that he may want to come after you for not really understanding MAGA, but I'm not sure that many in the MAGA movement, if they're really honest, can be comfortable with what is happening here.
I mean, look, I've never claimed to be a genius because I'm not a genius.
Oh, my God.
And so it's entirely possible there are motives I don't understand. I certainly tried to understand in many conversations with him, but maybe I didn't. I'll keep that.
He's such a fucking idiot, dude. He's such a virtue signaling shithead.
Possibility open. And as for what MAGA is, it's a slippery definition. I mean, I think George Orwell wrote a bunch of books about this, including Animal Farm. Definitions change. I remember someone pointing to a picture of 100% black people once and telling me that's diversity. Or thinking, looks like uniformity, actually. Like, what do these words mean? I don't know. I do know what America first.
I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
First means, because it's a much more precise description. And it means you put America first in every decision that you make as an American leader. And this, by that definition, falls far short. In fact, it is by definition not America first because the administration has already said we followed the lead of a foreign country. in doing this. We put their interest first. And I think most people, no matter how they feel about Israel, whether they love it or hate it, or it doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with this specific country. It has to do with any country that might be leading us around, particularly to our destruction, and putting its interest before ours. Our leaders can never agree to that, period, because it is the opposite of America first. So, whatever Trump said about me, I didn't take it personally. I suspect he doesn't really mean it because I've always gotten along with him for 30 years. I expect I always will. But on this one specific question, America first, we can say this was not America first. This was at least America second. I do think it's obvious that Israel understood, because they're not stupid, that the effect of this war would be to get the United States out of the Middle East. And unfortunately, I think that will be the effect. And they want that because why would you want a dominant power in your region telling you what to do and hemming you in, as the U.S. has to Israel? No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. We may not mean it, but we still hassle them used to hassle them over, say, the West Bank settlements. They want the U.S. out, and they're moving to India. Okay, that's their calculation. But how is that good for me as an American? It's not. So America first. Yeah, this was not America first.
That's an interesting kind of way to look at it.
Whatever it was.
Well, what is very interesting is that I can't remember a war that once it started where American forces have been committed by an American president where there hasn't been majority support for that war in the United States in the polling. This is the first time where there isn't. There's a majority of a lack of support for it. Americans are they're not buying this war. They don't want it. They don't really understand it. And they're very concerned about the consequences.
The only people who support this war are those born between 1946 and 1964 who watch a lot of Fox News. That's it. I'm not attacking them. By the way, they're Americans.
Wait, are you talking shit about Fox News? That's interesting.
They're my equals as Americans. I love a lot of them. But their perspective on the U.S. and the world is very different from everyone else's. Very, very different. And so they're not the ones who got Donald Trump elected, actually. The people who got Donald Trump elected are the people who hadn't voted for Republicans before or even voted at all before. And they're like Joe Rogan listeners, or people who use nicotine pouches. They're Hispanic voters. They're young black men. They're non-traditional Republican voters who voted for Trump because he promised not to keep doing the same thing. And one of the things he
and your dumbass bought it.
Promised not to do again was to hand operational authority over to Benjamin Netanyahu, as other presidents have. We don't want any more of that. Why would we? And we're not going to make Mark Levin or Ben Shapiro, who have almost no organic support in the media world, no one really watches them. We're not going to hand control of our foreign policy over to people like that who don't know anything and who don't have America's interests at heart or even in mind. So breaking faith with those people, those voters, the ones who actually got Trump elected and whose coalition promised a new day in American politics, that's a big deal. It's a betrayal on the level that I don't think people who aren't in those groups can understand. This is heartbreaking. And by the way, a lot of those people really like Trump. They like his style. They think he's hilarious. He's brave. He's just they like him. And to see this is, it's so wounding. It hurts. I've got a bunch who work for me. I'm related to some, they're all Trump.
A bunch of Trump supporters?
Voters. And I talked to them in the last 24 hours. Boy, they're upset. They're not just mad. I hate Israel. That's not the impulse. They're definitely starting to hate Israel. Why wouldn't they? Our relationship with Israel is hurting us gravely. It's getting Americans killed. So they're mad, but it's more than mad. I can't believe he did this to us.
Well, that's on you. Everybody saw this coming except for your dumbass, apparently.
I feel just so depressed about it.
How politically damaging could it be? We've got the midterms coming up in November. There were already a lot of reports that it was likely the Republicans would lose control of the House. Now I'm reading more reports that it may be that they even lose the Senate, which would render Trump, notwithstanding all his kind of mystical powers to avoid the normal norms of politics in America, if you don't have control of the House and the Senate, you are a lame duck president.
Almost guaranteed. I wrote this program called wavemap.us. Hold on. Here we go. And I display my political forecasting model. I named the wave model. and here's how it works. On the left side, you have a bunch of sliders. All of these sliders are standard metrics that affect political outcomes. So you got the generic ballot environment. That is the national political mood. For example, if something happens in Minnesota, some fraud takes place, and everybody's convinced that it's the Democrats' fault, that will change the generic ballot environment to favor Republicans. So this slider is basically D plus or minus. Right now, I think it's D plus 4 is the general consensus with other political forecasting agencies. The presidential approval rating, 42% is the, what's the word? The consolidated, there's a word for this, I don't remember, where the average, I guess. That's not the word, but anyway, it's the average. Consumer sentiment is an index. How are people feeling about the economy? Are we going in the right direction? This polling question comes out every time an election is about to take place. 36% say we're going in the right direction, and that's going to affect the party in power. So if it was 70%, most people feel we are going in the right direction, and there's a Republican in office, then more Republicans are going to win. And then we got the incumbency advantage, and that's state by state. This is the Senate map right now. But I added additional multipliers, the demobilization multiplier and the R mobilization multiplier. Right now, Republicans are not quite keeping up with population growth in their vote count. So they're at they're about 105% more people voting this year than in previous years for Republicans, which is low. Not insanely low, but low. But Democrats are seeing twice as many people vote for them as they did last time around. Texas saw double, 200% as many in the Texas primary alone. So if you take that to double how many people voted in the elections and you apply that to the other states, this is what it looks like for Senate elections. We get a supermajority, 60 senators. We are basically guaranteed to take the Senate, but we may even get a supermajority. To be conservative about it, I've been keeping it at about 1.5x or 150%. We still take Texas. We still take Tennessee, Florida, Ohio, even Iowa, and North Carolina, and even Montana. And you can kind of play with the sliders and stuff, and it's really interesting. Check it out.
Period. End.
I'm actually going to go grab something real fast. I'm going to let this play. I'll be right back, okay?
There's pretty much nothing more you can do.
That's true now. I mean, I think the conversation has moved on from the president. It's not an attack on him. He still, of course, is commander-in-chief. He threatened some kind of mass destruction of Iran yesterday. It sounded like a nuclear strike to me. So, like, he has the capacity, to make decisions. He's the president, elected president. However, as a political matter, that era is over for the reasons I just described. I didn't want that to be true, but the coalition is permanently fractured. He was not elected because of Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro did not get Donald Trump elected. A lot of the people Trump is now attacking got Donald Trump elected. Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera. So that coalition is done. The Republican Party, as currently constituted, will not continue because it doesn't represent its voters. It doesn't even try to represent its voters. In fact, it shows open hostility to its voters. So nothing like that can continue for very long because it doesn't make any sense. It's a bicycle with square wheels. It's ludicrous. So the question is, what comes next? And I do think it's possible to recreate some version of the 2020 Trump coalition or the 2024 Trump coalition on the basis of his core promise, which is just put the country first. And like, you're going to make mistakes and we're not exactly sure how to fix certain things, but let's all try. And by the way, let's be united as we do it. The ugliest thing to come out of the Mark Levin-controlled Republican Party, which I find repulsive, and I just want to say I'll do everything I can to stop that party from becoming, any more powerful than it is try to stoke religious conflict in the United States, attacking people for being like a different religion. We hate the Muslims, really. How is that different from we hate the Jews? Well, it's not in any sense different at all. And I would say, just thinking long-term about the United States, the greatest threat is not even the loss of the US dollar as the reserve currency globally. The greatest threat is tribalism, where the country fractures into warring tribes. And people like Levin are doing their best to create that. And it's totally immoral and dangerous. It will result in violence. Their endless harping on this anti-Semitism question is part of that. Anti-Semitism is immoral. It's every bit as immoral as anti-white bias, which is encoded in the federal government, by the way, and every elite institution in the United States discriminates against whites. That is every bit as immoral as anti-Semitism. That's every bit as immoral as hating anybody else on the basis of their bloodline, because it's a universal principle. It applies to every human being. It's a human right to be treated as an individual and not be held responsible for the sins of your parents. That is a human right in the West. And people like Levin and Shapiro don't recognize that because they are not Western in their orientation. They think that rights only apply to the groups they favor. And that idea, that evil idea, which was the basis of Nazism, by the way, that is the thing that will destroy the United States. And the next leadership of this country, whoever it is, has to articulate we're all American citizens. We must be treated equally under the law. Bias against one group is no better or worse than bias against another group, period. Anti-Semitism. Where were you when the ADL was openly promoting anti-white hate? So now the ADL is an authority on bias crimes? They've abetted bias crimes. They are currently abetting bias crimes. The ADL and every single one of these groups has an absolute moral obligation to treat anti-white hate, which is the only kind encoded in U.S. law right now, as every bit the threat of anti-Semitic hate. How are they different? They're not. And no one will say that until someone does say that. You will not reunite this country. And if this continues, the country will fracture.
As we're talking, with glorious coincidence, Ben Shapiro has been releasing various clips on his social media platforms. One of them goes after me and Megyn Kelly. Me because he blew his gasket about Dave Smith appearing on my show, launched into my show, said it was just Jerry Springer. As I like Jerry Springer, I knew him very well. I worked with him on America's Got Talent. He's actually a very smart guy. Used to be a news anchor, mayor of Cincinnati. Really interesting guy, much smarter than Ben Shapiro. So I took that as a compliment. But and I responded. He didn't like the response. He's come back. He's called me Jerry Springer again. He's called me a click whore. He says I'm a pussy bitch, and he goes on and on and on. I don't actually want to play the clip about me, because he's trying to basically suggest that if you platform anybody that he hasn't approved as a person that can speak about Israel, in other words, someone who's a propagandist for Israel who will not criticize Israel, then you yourself are promoting anti-Semitism, therefore you're an anti-Semite, therefore you're basically borderline Nazi. But I do want to play what he said about you, because he's been railing the same stuff against you, which I don't think anyone who has watched this interview so far will have concluded, oh yeah, Tucker sounds like a raging anti-Semite. He sounds like a Nazi. You couldn't sound less like either of those things, and yet he's just posted this. Let's take a look.
I started originally criticizing Tucker Carlson for his economic programs back in 2018. And then in the more...
Okay, backsies. Sorry about that. Alrighty, let's continue with where we were. Just a second here. He gets a good noodle star. Do I get a good noodle star? Am I a good noodle? All right. Cool. Let's continue. Adjust my chair here. A little toasty up in this piece. Let me turn my heat down here. All right. Good. All right. No, I did not speed up Ben Shapiro.
I did not speed up Ben Shapiro, speaking of Chipmunk.
All right, let's continue.
There's pretty much nothing more you can do.
That's true now. I mean, I think the conversation has moved on from the president. It's not an attack on him. He still, of course, is commander-in-chief. He threatened some kind of mass destruction of Iran yesterday. It sounded like a nuclear strike to me. So, like, he has the capacity, to make decisions. He's the president, elected president. However, as a political matter, that era is over for the reasons I just described. I didn't want that to be true, but the coalition is permanently fractured. He was not elected because of Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro did not get Donald Trump elected. A lot of the people Trump is now attacking got Donald Trump elected. Marjorie Taylor Greene, et cetera. So that coalition is done. The Republican Party, as currently constituted, will not continue because it doesn't represent its voters. It doesn't even try to represent its voters. In fact, it shows open hostility to its voters. So nothing like that can continue for very long because it doesn't make any sense. It's a bicycle with square wheels. It's ludicrous. So the question is, what comes next? And I do think it's possible.
Keep that up, Owen, and I will render you as a chipmunk. Oh, boy.
To recreate some version of the 2020 Trump coalition or the 2024 Trump coalition on the basis of his core promise, which is just put the country first. And like, you're going to make mistakes and we're not exactly sure how to fix certain things, but let's all try. And by the way, let's be united as we do it. The ugliest thing to come out of the Mark Levin-controlled Republican Party, which I find repulsive, and I just want to say I'll do everything I can to stop that party from becoming, any more powerful than it is.
He's talking about the Zionist wing of the U.S. government, or of the Republican Party.
Is try to stoke religious conflict in the United States. Attacking people for being like a different religion. We hate the Muslims, really. How is that different from we hate the Jews? Well, it's not in any sense different at all. And I would say, just thinking long-term about the United States, the greatest threat is not even the loss of the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency globally. The greatest threat is tribalism, where the country fractures into warring tribes. And
oh, please, as if Tucker Carlson has not been setting out to do that intentionally, specifically. Give it a fucking rest, dude. Yes, Owen, you're a good noodle. I appreciate that.
This organisation is considered a charity in the UK.
Sorry, that was random. Something popped up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to mute the tab. All right. Nope, not mute the site. Mute the tab. Can I not mute tabs? Just plain tabs? Apparently not. Okay. Anyway.
People like
this organisation is considered a charity in the UK.
Sorry. Try that again.
Their best to create that, where the country fractures into warring tribes. And people like Levin are doing their best to create that. And it's totally immoral and dangerous. It will result in violence. Their endless harping on this anti-Semitism question is part of that. Anti-Semitism is immoral. It's every bit as immoral as anti-white bias, which is encoded in the federal government, by the way, and every elite institution in the United States discriminates against whites. That is every bit as immoral as anti-Semitism. That's every bit as immoral as hating anybody else on the basis of their bloodline, because it's a universal principle. It applies to every human being. It's a human right to be treated as an individual and not be held responsible for the sins of your parents. That is a human right in the West. And people like Levin and Shapiro don't recognize that because they are not Western in their orientation. They think that rights only apply to the groups they favor. And that idea, that evil idea, which was the basis of Nazism, by the way.
Okay, I'm sorry. One more time.
And people like Levin and Shapiro don't recognize that because they are not Western in their orientation. They think that rights only apply to the groups they favor.
That's true. Yes, I agree.
And that idea, that evil idea, which was the basis of Nazism, by
yes, okay. Well, it's not the basis, but it was a part of Nazi ideology, for sure.
the way, That is the thing that will destroy the United States. And the next leadership of this country, whoever it is, has to articulate we're all American citizens. We must be treated equally under the law. Bias against one group is no better or worse than bias against another group, period. Anti-Semitism. Where were you when the ADL was openly promoting anti-white hate? So now the ADL is an authority on bias crimes?
Oh my God, dude. The ADL is actually fucking terrible. And this was the thing that really pushed me over the edge with the ADL. I was a bit on the fence with them, at the time, but when they actually defended Elon Musk doing the Nazi salute, that's when I drew a line. I'm completely done with the ADL. They're vile. They are supposed to defend Jews who are being targeted for their Jewish heritage or whatever. And they actually defended a guy doing a Nazi salute. That is too fucking much for me. Regarding their anti-white sentiment, they don't have anti-white sentiment. That's delusion. But the ADL is awful.
They've abetted bias crimes. They are currently abetting bias crimes. The ADL and every single one of these groups has an absolute moral obligation to treat anti-white hate, which is the only kind encoded in U.S. law right now, as every bit the threat of anti-Semitic hate. How are they different? They're not. And no one will say that until someone does say that. You will not reunite this country. And if this continues, the country will fracture.
As we're talking, with glorious coincidence, Ben Shapiro has been releasing various clips on his social media platforms. One of
Oh shit! Is Ben Shapiro talking shit about them live?
them goes after me and Megyn Kelly. Me because he blew his gasket about Dave Smith appearing on my show, launched into my show, said it was just Jerry Springer. As I like Jerry Springer, I knew him very well. I worked with him on America's Got Talent. He actually...
Okay, well, he was trashy, right? Can you admit that he was trashy? Why are you talking about liking the fucking guy? It's about how he acted generally. Jerry Springer was actually pretty cool. I like Jerry Springer too as a person. He was the mayor of, or the governor of Texas. What was he? I think he was maybe a mayor. Let's see. No, he was... he served as 56th mayor of Cincinnati from 1977 to 78, Cincinnati, Ohio. Then in 81, he stepped down from his seat on the city council to run for governor of Ohio, seeking Democratic nomination in the 1982 race, but he failed to win it, finishing a distant third behind Richard F. Celeste and William J. Brown. He also flirted with higher office later in life. He considered running for U.S. Senate in 2000 and 2004, and again looked at the 2018 Ohio gubernatorial race, but decided against it due to his age. He's dead now. Rest in peace. But yeah, he was pretty cool in a lot of ways. He was very trashy. Oh my God, was he trashy. We can all agree he was fucking trashy, right?
A very smart guy, used to be a news anchor, mayor of Cincinnati, really interesting guy, much smarter than Ben Shapiro. So I took that as a compliment. But and I responded. He didn't like the response. He's come back. He's called me Jerry Springer again. He's called me a click whore. He says I'm a pussy bitch. And
he is very much like Jerry Springer in that he's trashy. Piers Morgan, that's absolutely true. He wants drama, stupid, vapid drama on his show. Piers Morgan Uncensored. And that's why he brings YouTubers on to talk shit to each other.
He goes on and on and on. I don't actually want to play the clip about me because he's trying to basically suggest that if you platform anybody that he hasn't approved as a person that can speak about Israel, in other words, someone who's a propagandist for Israel who will not criticize Israel, then you yourself are promoting anti-Semitism, therefore you're an anti-Semite, therefore you're basically borderline Nazi. But I do want to play what he said about you.
In all seriousness, Israel is made up of modern day Nazis that are not opposed to Jews, obviously, since Israel is predominantly Jewish, but they're ultra-nationalist extremists who are committing a genocide out of their minds. Insane, disturbing shit. What is going on in Israel right now. And it should tell you something about the temperature of the people in Israel and what they're up to, that a young boy, a Palestinian boy, was brutally raped in an IDF detention facility so badly that he needed surgeries, like multiple surgeries, to stitch him up. And the IDF soldiers, the 5 of them who partook in this activity, not only was it dismissed, the charges were dismissed, they became national heroes in Israel. They were national heroes. Fucking disturbing what's going on in Israel right now.
Because he's been railing the same stuff against you, which I don't think anyone who has watched this interview so far will have concluded, oh yeah, Tucker sounds like a raging anti-Semite. He sounds like a Nazi. You couldn't sound less like either of those things, and yet he's just posted this. Let's take a look.
I started originally criticizing Tucker Carlson for his economic programs back in 2018. And then in the more modern post-Fox iteration of Tucker, I started criticizing Tucker over his going to Russia to sniff the bread and kiss Vladimir Putin's ass.
That's true. He did do that. It was bad.
My generalized critique of Tucker in the last few months has been, one, he hosted and glossed a Nazi, Nick Fuentes, which doesn't have to do with Israel. It has to do with glazing a Nazi, Nick Fuentes. And then I did a speech at Heritage in which I went through the fact that Tucker Carlson is in no way, shape, or form a traditional conservative, that he's a conspiratorial near-anarchist at this point.
I think, I have no dog in this fight, but I think that Tucker is more of a traditional conservative than Ben Shapiro, in that they're in favor of traditional marriage or traditionalism, in that they're traditionally religious, and that they want lower taxes and stuff like that. Ben Shapiro is very in favor of government spending. That's probably one of the biggest differences between the two, in the form of war in the Middle East.
Seeking to tear down the fundamental ideas and institutions of the United States. Go watch the Heritage speech. I believe Israel is mentioned once in a 35-minute speech that is all about Tucker's general view of the world and how it does not represent traditional conservatism in any way. I think that Tucker Carlson has fostered anti-Semitism by having on some of the worst anti-Semites in America over and over and over, and then essentially laundering their views.
So it's the same attack line, essentially, about the anti-Semitism, which is if you or I or Megyn Kelly, whoever it may be, dares to platform anybody who is critical of Israel. Let's be clear. I mean, in my case, I've always made it crystal clear, as you have in this interview, I have absolutely no problem with Israel, the state of Israel, with Israelis, with Jewish people, many Jewish friends.
I have a problem with Israel and Israelis right now. Obviously, I don't have a problem with Jewish people. But to say that they are one and the same, Israel and Jews, is to tacitly admit that it's an ethno-state. And I have a problem with that, if nothing else. So, in response, Israel likes to call people anti-Semitic for being anti-Israel. It's not anti-Semitism to be opposed to what a country is doing with its military.
Friends, it's nothing to do with that. I reserve the right as a journalist to criticize any government, and I particularly reserve the right to criticize the Israeli government, given what it's been doing in the last few years, as any decent journalist should, not least because in Gaza, for example, the Israeli government continues to ban international journalists from operating there or even going on into Gaza to verify what they've been up to. That alone should be a warning sign to everybody that the Israeli government has probably been doing things in Gaza it doesn't want people to know. But I took the same view. I oppose the Iraq war. We've talked about this before. But I led the media campaign in the UK against the Iraq war, even though my own brother ended up fighting in it. But I opposed it, and I think was vindicated by what happened afterwards, sadly. But I opposed it and took on Tony Blair, who was the then British Prime Minister, even though my newspaper was the Labour sympathetic newspaper, the Daily Mirror, to the Labour government. But I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. It didn't mean that I hated British people or my country. In fact, quite the opposite. It meant that I wanted to help the British people.
This is the line of propaganda they like to run. If you don't support the war, then you hate America. Then you hate the troops and you hate the president and you want them to fail. When in reality, people do this because they love their country and they want what's best for the country and their fellow countrymen.
And help my country from stumbling into a disaster. And I sense from you that your position about Iran is not driven by a hatred of Jews or Israelis or Israel. It is driven by a sense that you feel this is bad for America and Americans, and probably bad for Israelis and Jewish people as well.
It absolutely is. They are not making it themselves any friends in the world with the shit that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I care about the United States. Again, I was born here. My family's been here hundreds of years. I care about it. I don't expect I'll be able to save it, but I want to do whatever I can to make it better and to avoid obvious disasters like this one. I don't want to attack Ben Shapiro, other than to say, like, that guy went to Harvard, and so did Bill Ackman. Like, at some point, you need to reassess. No, I'm serious, though. These are two of the most famous, richest people in our world. They both went to Harvard. I know them both. Not geniuses, like, not even close to geniuses. And so, like, our system itself is not producing wise people or even very knowledgeable people. Like, Ben Shapiro had no idea there was a strait at the end of the Persian Gulf and why it was important. You need a system that produces superior people. The British Empire did a pretty good job of this. The United States before the Second World War did a pretty good job of this. We need to reassess our system. That's the first thing I would say. Second, you're right. This is absurd. I think I've actually even argued with you about Israel. I was taking a tougher position than you. You've been a defender of Israel. Yeah. That's why this is so crazy. He wants to talk about this in order to get, this is projection. You're all about clicks. No, actually, Ben Shapiro is all about the money.
Yeah, I agree. They're both about the money, honestly. Like, it can be both. Also,
looks like Miracle turned me into a chipmunk. That's pretty good. It says 68 degrees and everything. That's awesome. Pretty good stuff. I like that.
And about the clicks. But here's the part that I think that we should be concerned about. It is now a crime in a lot of the West to criticize Israel. People were arrested yesterday in Australia for criticizing Israel. Outside, publicly, not attacking Jews, not attacking physically anybody, saying, I'm against the state of Israel. They're arrested for it. They're in jail tonight. That's also true in the UK, as you know. It's true in Canada. It's true throughout Europe. And Ben Shapiro and people in the administration would like to make that the law here. This is the last holdout of free speech on planet Earth, the United States. It's encoded in our Constitution. Also, I would say in the American DNA.
You mean codified in our Constitution. It's not encoded because it's not a cryptographic cipher.
We have a right to say whatever we believe is true, period. And that very much includes criticism of a foreign country. You'll never hear me saying from the river to the sea, because I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Oh, please. It's used by both terrorists and by normal people. I don't actually think we should use the phrase because the phrase is easily co-opted by right-wing propagandists to point at people who use it and say, see, they're terrorists, when there are better phrases or slogans to be used that have not also been used by terrorists, and it makes it harder for people to manipulate the information and turn you into a monster or whatever, you know.
However, if I want to say from the river to the sea, I certainly will. And I'll do that until I die.
It just means Palestine will be free. It just means they're going to have the right to self-determination. That's it.
Because that's my birthright. That's a right given to me by God, not the U.S. government. And Ben Shapiro and a lot of these people are saying it out loud. We need to penalize anti-Semites with the law. What does that even mean? You can never, in the United States, prosecute or even persecute someone for his beliefs. For your beliefs, you have the right of conscience in this country. The UK used to have it. Australia used to have it. New Zealand used to have it. Now they're going to jail for saying things that Ben Shapiro doesn't like. So we should be wary of this because it's all preparatory to legislative and regulatory changes that will ban free speech in the United States. They're saying it out loud. That's happening.
I also think that the really insidious part of it, and there were many insidious parts of it, one is to silence people and to threaten them and to get them cancelled and so on, which is very hypocritical coming from someone like Ben Shapiro, who pretends to be the great king of free speech. But also, yeah, exactly. I ended my own monologue response to him by saying those exact words, which probably triggered his little pussy bitch outburst today.
Oh my God, come on. You're so cringy, Piers. Please don't.
He's called me.
Like, I don't like Ben Shapiro either, but these people are so goddamn cringy.
But I think the other thing that I find insidious, Tucker, is that there are genuine anti-Semitic people. There are people that hate Jews because they're Jewish. There are people that wish harm to Jews. There are people who still have Nazi sympathies.
Absolutely. And Nick Fuentes, who Tucker Carlson platformed, had a conversation with for like 2 hours, is one of them.
Who think the Holocaust was a good thing. These people exist. And if you start branding everybody that's critical of this current very hardline Israeli government, with people like Smodrich and Ben-Gvir, who have extremely hardline views, if you criticize a government and you get branded anti-Semitic for criticizing the government for policies that many people think are wrong, then what you're doing, you're allowing the genuine anti-Semites, the genuine Nazi sympathizers, to just ride under the radar. Because, if you go on social media now, everyone's an anti-Semite, according to Ben Shapiro and these guys. Once everyone becomes something, even though the vast majority are not that thing, then the ones who really are that thing get to operate much more freely, I think.
That may be true. That's not my first concern. My first concern is the innocent falsely accused, always. It is better to let people get away with it.
The innocent falsely accused? They're not going to fucking prison over this, Tucker. He's such a ridiculous human being. Like, yes, it's better for one guilty man to go, or 10 guilty men to go free than one innocent man to have his liberty taken from him. This is not jail. You're being accused of being a Nazi, and that's what you are, actually. But okay.
Crimes than it is to punish a single innocent man. That has always been a bedrock assumption of American justice and of justice itself. You can't punish the innocent. Of course, Israel specializes in punishing the innocent, killing the families of people they don't like. So it's not a concept that people like Ben Shapiro understand or care about, but it's the basis of Western civilization. So you do not accuse or penalize innocent people, much less kill them, A. B, this is a universal principle. It is not specific to one ethnic group or one bloodline. The principle is you cannot attack or penalize people, punish them for the sins, real or perceived, of their ancestors, period. And in the United States right now, and this has been true for 60 years, the only group that is routinely denied jobs, promotions, federal grants, college admission to Harvard is Christian whites. And it's embedded in.
Oh, please, dude. White people are the victims in every situation. Oh, these poor white people, so mistreated. This is fucking absurd.
In the law in the United States, we call it affirmative action, DEI, diversity imperatives, whatever. That's the law in the United States.
No, it literally is not the law in the United States. Affirmative action hasn't been the law in the United States for a while now, first of all. And second, the whole goal behind it was to make sure people are treated fairly and equally. That's it.
And so if we're going to tackle bias, and I think we should, through moral suasion, we need to attack it equally, evenly, as a universal principle, because if these protections apply only to your group, they're not valid. That's just tribalism. I don't care, actually. And then we're in a system where we only care about our own groups. No law or principle has meaning or validity unless it's universal, unless it applies to all human beings, all American citizens. And so I would just remind Ben Shapiro of that. You need to push back, if you're pushing back against anti-Semitism, you need to push back against the only kind of hate and bias embedded in U.S. law. It's the U.S. law. And this administration has done not so much to change that. I don't understand why. I hope they will. But as long as we're doing this, let's just apply it to every human being, because human rights are a real thing. Those rights were endowed by God. I just want to, I know Ben Shapiro went to Harvard, but he should meditate on that for a minute.
Well, also, he should meditate on the fact that to a lot of outrage from people on the pro-Palestinian side, when I was very vociferous in my belief when the war on Hamas started, that Israel didn't just have a right to defend itself, it had a fundamental duty to defend itself after what was an appalling terrorist attack, with 1,200 people killed and nearly 7,000 wounded and 250 kidnapped, including a baby and Holocaust survivors and so on. Of course they had to defend themselves. By taking such a strong position as I did for a long time, and you and I did argue about this as it went on,
yes.
I took a lot of heat coming from the other side about that. And, I made the point to Shapiro.
Such a victim.
This week, I've taken heat from both sides, and I'm fine with that. I actually think journalists should take heat from both sides of almost any issue, because it probably means you're doing the right thing. You're asking the right questions at the right time. But he was very keen to come on my show and enjoy the clicks that came from the interviews that we did when he perceived me to be somebody on his side. But what he didn't understand was I never saw it as taking a side. I just saw it as they had a right to defend themselves, as America did after 9/11, as Britain did, when we had the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. You have a right to defend your country, whoever you are.
Yeah, but Israel isn't being attacked exactly. On October 7th, they were attacked for sure. And they should have upped their security and found ways to protect themselves and everything else. This is a genocide now.
If you're under attack. But he mistook that for me taking a tribal position with him, that I was on his side. And the moment I began to deviate from that, I began to get more critical of Israel, certainly from the start of last year onwards, I became much more critical. He couldn't handle it. And then he didn't just refuse to come on the show. He refused to reply to my texts. We'd always had a very cordial relationship. And then he started attacking me in public. And I was watching all this going, really? You're the free speech guy? You're the guy that tells the world how important free speech is?
Okay, I don't like Ben Shapiro or Piers Morgan, but Ben Shapiro has no obligation to talk to some douchebag that he doesn't like. That has nothing to do with free speech.
You're the one that says repeatedly, facts don't care about your feelings. And yet here you're letting your feelings override any changing facts on the ground in Gaza, for example. And I felt that was just so rankly hypocritical.
And also embarrassing. I mean, he's ruled by his emotions. So, which is, lots of us are. I am sometimes, for sure. Try not to.
I think that Shapiro is just very propagandized to the point that he is now the propagandizer.
But here's a guy whose whole brand, carefully constructed brand with his carefully constructed deal with Facebook, is based on his cool analysis, right? Facts don't care about your feelings. I'm a facts guy. And here he is allowing his one overriding love in life, which is for the Benjamin Netanyahu government, to determine who he's friends with. And by the way, you see a lot of this. I mean, I called Mark Levin right after Charlie Kirk was killed to say, geez, this is horrible. And let's stop fighting because we probably have a lot in common. And, let's just not fight. When you see someone killed who you love, it's like you want to fight less. So that's why I called him. And he was nice, by the way. He was. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. And
I honestly believed that Charlie Kirk's death was going to be the start of something very, very ugly. And it could have been. Trump chose not to take it in that ugly direction as he could have if he wanted. Real disturbing shit, though. That was the kind of thing that could have actually thrown the entire United States into full-blown, actual dictatorship and or civil war. That was a very, very dangerous moment in U.S. history that we lived through.
Then he starts getting this whole thing about, my mother told me there was going to be another Holocaust in the United States. And he goes, they're coming for the Jews. And, you know, I don't want to make fun of other people's fears because, you know, we all have fears that may or may not be reasonable. But it was so real to him. And I almost said, geez, Mark, you know, of course, I'm totally opposed to hurting anybody, period. I'm a Christian.
I bet.
But I don't think we're on the cusp of that, you know, like in Connecticut right now. But it was so real to him. Like his fear of that, like, dominated everything. And it really, I guess what I would say is, I don't think Shapiro and Levin and Ackman and some of these people get the credit they deserve for sincerity. Like, I think that they really think we're on the verge of something horrible domestically. And
we were. But I don't think that we are anymore, because I don't think that Trump is, or whoever is in charge, is willing to take it that far. That moment could have been the Reichstag fire. And I watched, you know, I have read so much about what happened after the Reichstag fire burned down and how it was weaponized against people and everything. The fact that that did not happen. They had an opportunity to go door to door arresting Democrats after Charlie Kirk died, and they didn't do that. So there's that.
And the sad thing is their neuroses and their inability to control their emotions divides Americans and scares the crap out of a lot of really decent people who I know who are Jewish. They're like, oh my gosh, you know, we're on the verge of a pogrom. And
we were close to a pogrom. Yes, absolutely.
You want to say, you know, first of all, I don't think we are. Second, I'll do whatever I can to stop that because I hate that kind of thing. And let's, you know, calm down. But no, I think they believe it. And I think the net effect is to inspire group cohesion, which, again, may be part of the point. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's bad. It's corrosive. It destroys friendships. It will destroy the country. Like, everyone needs to calm down a little bit, I guess I would say.
Interesting that Tucker Carlson, of all people, is saying that, and that Tucker Carlson realized how close we were to a pogrom. That's really fascinating.
There was an interesting response to something you said about when Trump said he wouldn't accept anything less than unconditional surrender from Iran. You discussed that and what unconditional surrender means. Let's take a listen to what you said.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, as you know, a lot of people jumped on that and, you know, who don't like you, and said that what you were inferring was that the US military in this eventuality would be capable of raping women.
I mean, that's what unconditional surrender means, right?
If Trump went through with his aim of achieving unconditional surrender.
I
mean, do you want to clarify what you said? Do you want to respond to what those people have been saying?
Sure. Let me just say, I almost never infer anything because I'm not a woman. I just say what I think.
Okay. What? I'm sorry. One more time.
Let me just say, I almost never infer anything because I'm not a woman.
Inferring means you are coming to a conclusion based on something that somebody else said. Inferring means you are picking up what they're putting down. And they're apparently only women interpret what people are trying to communicate. That was a wild... I got to take that down. I got to grab that clip.
sad thing is their neuroses and their inability to control their emotions divides Americans and scares the crap out of a lot of really decent people who I know who are Jewish. They're like, oh my gosh, we're on the verge of a pogrom. And you want to say, first of all, I don't think we are. Second,
hold on.
The crap out of a lot of their control their emotions divides Americans and scares the crap out of a lot of really decent people who I know who are Jewish. They're like, oh my gosh, we're on the verge of a pogrom. And you want to say, first of all, I don't think we are. Second, I'll do whatever I can to stop that because I hate that kind of thing. And let's, calm down. But no, I think they believe it. And I think the net effect is to inspire divides Americans. And I think that they really think we're on the verge of something horrible.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want, and everyone thinks there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything.
No, a lot of people jumped on that and who don't like you and said that what you were inferring was that the US military in this eventuality would be capable of raping women if Trump went through with his aim of achieving unconditional surrender. Do you want to clarify what you said? Do you want to respond to what those people have been saying?
Sure. Let me just say, I almost never infer anything because I'm not a woman.
What a wild thing to say, dude.
Sure. Let me just say, I almost never infer anything because I'm not a woman. I just say what I think. I don't play chess. I play checkers. Pretty straightforward person. That's my wife. And so if I thought that U.S. troops would rape Iranians, which I don't think, I would just say so. I don't think that. And
okay, yeah, I got to grab that. Tucker Carlson believed we were on the verge of a pogrom after Charlie Kirk. Says he doesn't infer anything because he's not a woman. What a wild fucking thing to say. Inferring is the opposite of implying. I imply something and you infer that thing that I implied. So only women infer things?
And so if I thought that U.S. troops would rape Iranians, which I don't think, I would just say so. I don't think that. And when the U.S. military admitted that it bombed the girls' school attached to the Iranian naval base at the beginning of the conflict, my immediate assumption was that was a mistake, and I still believe that. Now, where did the targeting come from? That's a real question.
Yes, somebody asks, did they mean imply? Yes, they meant imply, and they don't know what the difference is. Only women imply things, I guess. All right.
And we should find out. But no, of course, I give American troops the benefit of the doubt always, as I give Americans the benefit of the doubt always, unlike Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, who are telling their viewers that Americans are going to rise up in a pogrom or a Holocaust. I don't think Americans are like that. I don't think they're capable of that.
I wouldn't be so sure.
And so I have very high opinion of Americans, period. And so I was not saying that. What I'm saying is a very obvious thing that any wise person understands, which is unconditional surrender is a lot to ask. And it's a lot to ask of anybody because it throws open any possibility. And the fact is, again, this is not something historically illiterate people would know, unconditional surrenders historically have always been followed by mass killing and rape and looting because there's no defense. You have said, what I have is now yours.
It happened in World War II. After World War II ended, there was evil stuff happening. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back. What's up? Love you. Okay. That sounds like a good idea for sure. Alpha Force Zero dealing with some stuff at the moment.
You can tell them.
Alpha Force Zero got broken up with by her boyfriend. So, yeah. Keeping one of the pairs of pants because she really likes them, but she's returning everything else, and he can go suck eggs. If he wants the pants back, he's gonna suck it.
Jesus. Guys, I still really like him, so I'm kind of upset, but this is me trying to be better. Because I usually get attached to people. This is me not being attached.
Be best, as Melania Trump says.
Yes, I'm gonna be best. I am giving him his shirt and one of his pairs of pants back, and I'm keeping the other because I look better in it than he does. And we blocked each other on like everything. So what's he gonna do if he wants them back? My friend is the one who told him I would give it back if he asked, and he said to her that I could give it back. And she's the one who convinced me to keep the pair that I look great in. And so she said, if he asks, I'll tell him I think you burned it or something, and then walk away.
Okay, that works.
I did a little quote. I said, you should say, I don't know, I saw a bonfire at their house earlier, so.
All right, that works. Okay, we're going to continue with Tucker Carlson.
I'm just reading. Chat.
Okay.
Love you. Have fun.
Love you. All right. You too.
I don't work today.
Oh, awesome. Do you have therapy?
No, I have therapy tomorrow.
Awesome. All right.
That's what an unconditional surrender is. And so it's a very, very high bar to set for anybody, and it takes off the table any real possibility of diplomacy. And diplomacy is, by the way, one of our great powers. The United States has had the ability to negotiate out of situations that would hurt us and others without violence. That's a power. That's why we have a State Department and a Secretary of State. My father worked there. I know how this works.
Yeah, his dad was an ambassador, I believe.
And it doesn't always work well, of course, but when you don't have it at all you have left are weapons. And our weapons are proving inadequate. So then you have to escalate to what? Weapons of mass destruction. Do you really want to go there? I don't think you do. No normal person wants to go there. So anyway, that's the only point I was making. An unconditional surrender, would you unconditionally surrender your home and your family to anyone? Of course you wouldn't, because you're a man with self-respect who's head of household. You would die before you allowed your wife and children to fall into the hands of someone who meant them harm. Of course, that's the standard, Dumbo. It's not about...
Wow. Language, sir. Can you imagine calling somebody the D word in today's environment? Jeez. Watch your mouth, Tucker.
Attacking American troops. That's the standard, Dumbo. It's not about attacking American troops. It's about assessing whether that kind of threat is going to get you what you want, which is advantage to your country with as few dead as possible. I don't even know what world we're living in where the people in charge are this stupid that you would have to explain something so obvious, and that children on the sidelines, like the kid with the eyebrows, would be like barking, "You hate American troops." No. All I care about is the United States, in contrast to you. And so it's almost like insulting to play along with these lies, but, I guess you have to.
There was something else that Ted Cruz said in his little rant about you. He said, Tucker says there's no one...
Don't you love his stupid fucking clown laugh when he laughs like a fucking idiot?
On planet Earth he hates more than Christian Zionists, and he blamed in particular me and Mike Huckabee as objects of his ire, and I wear that as a badge of honor. Is that true? Are these the two people you hate most on planet Earth, and is it because they're Christian Zionists?
I wouldn't say, well, first of all, I think Christian Zionist would be an upgrade for Ted Cruz, who couldn't name the book of the Bible he said his theology came from. So I don't think Christianity, even in its perverted Zionist form, informs any opinion that Ted Cruz has, assuming he has authentic opinions. So that would be a compliment to call him a Christian Zionist. He's beneath that. I would say I criticized Shapiro and Levin for losing control of their emotions. I lost control of mine when I said that. I shouldn't have said that. I've apologized for it repeatedly. I'll do so again. I'm sorry that I said that, because I don't hate Christian Zionists. I'm deeply frustrated with some evangelical leaders who are not preaching Christianity, but some sick, weird, culty version of it that puts Benjamin Netanyahu ahead of Jesus. And that's not Christianity. It's totally wrong. And some of them are quite ruthless, I've learned.
I'm sorry. It absolutely is Christianity. If they claim to follow Jesus, that's all they need to be considered Christian.
Personally, Franklin Graham, for example, I went in to see Trump, and Trump says, "I just got a letter from Franklin Graham calling you an anti-Semite." Franklin Graham, an anti-Semite? Really? Yes, and it's right here. He showed it to me. So I leave the meeting, and I immediately call Franklin Graham. Like, what? Why would you call me an anti-Semite? And why didn't you call me first? If you think I'm an anti-Semite, wouldn't you want to persuade me not to be? Because that's a pretty ugly thing to be. And as a Christian,
he's absolutely an anti-Semite. This is nothing to do with being America first or whatever. He fucking hates Jews, period.
Fellow Christian, you want to talk? He wouldn't take my call. I went back and forth texting with his assistant like all day. Well, when can I speak to him? Maybe next week. He's learning to be a private pilot. I'm like, he's 74. He doesn't have time to at least account for a letter that he sent to Trump calling me an anti-Semite and telling Trump never to talk to me again. I'm like, that behavior is so un-Christian and so low, so sneaky, so dishonest.
Christians are not low, sneaky, and or dishonest sometimes.
That it offends me as a Christian to see it conducted in the name of Jesus. I just think that that's really wrong. I don't think I have a monopoly on the truth. I don't think I'm a very good Christian. I'm not. But I don't think that's Christianity. I just don't.
Well, you're mistaken, good sir. Christianity is whatever Christians say it is.
And I'm sorry that it makes Ted Cruz mad. As for Ted Cruz, he says he's running against me for president. I almost want to run for president just to debate Ted Cruz.
That's interesting. Sounds to me like he's saying he's going to run for president. Okay. Let me grab that clip again. Hang on.
Because I think, to me again, I'm like, that behavior is so unchristian. Hey, well, when can I speak? Well, maybe next week. He's learning to be a private pilot. I'm like, he's 74. He doesn't have time to at least account for a letter that he sent to Trump calling me an anti-Semite and telling Trump never to talk to me again. Like that behavior is, I'm like, that behavior is so unchristian and so low, so sneaky, so dishonest that it offends me as a Christian to see it conducted in the name of Jesus. I just think that that's really wrong. I don't think I have a monopoly on the truth. I don't think I'm a very good Christian. I'm not. But I don't think that's Christianity. I just don't. And I'm sorry that it makes Ted Cruz mad. As for Ted Cruz, he says he's running against me for president. I almost want to run for president just to debate Ted Cruz because I think it would go about the way it went last time. And for my part, I deeply enjoyed it, which is why I've never tweeted about it, because I just keep that little spark of joy inside me for rainy days. And I think about that conversation and smile.
That's interesting.
You know, Polymarket is running a who should be the Republican presidential nominee in 2028. J.D. Vance is in the 39%, Marco Rubio 28%, as you may expect. And then comes Ron DeSantis, but you're fifth. Albeit at 2% at the moment. Ted Cruz is only 1%, so you're twice as popular as Ted Cruz already to be the Republican nominee. I mean, my question for you, Tucker, about that, I know you said you'll never do this, but I would ask the question and throw it back to you. Well, why wouldn't you? Given there's this huge ideological battle going,
I need to grab this whole section.
Why wouldn't you actually run to preserve the?
Hold on.
Ask the question and throw it back to you. Well, why? I know you.
All right, hang on 1 second here.
I'm sorry that it makes Ted Cruz mad. As for Ted Cruz, he says he's running against me for president. I almost want to run for president.
Tucker Carlson says he wants to run for president against Ted Cruz. All right, let's continue.
Just to debate Ted Cruz, because I think it would go about the way it went last time. And for my part, I deeply enjoyed it, which is why I've never tweeted about it, because I just keep that little spark of joy inside me for rainy days. And I think about that conversation and smile.
You know, Polymarket is running a who should be the Republican presidential nominee in 2028. J.D. Vance is in the 39%, Marco Rubio 28%, as you may expect. And then comes Ron DeSantis, but you're fifth, albeit at 2% at the moment. Ted Cruz is only 1%, so you're twice as popular as Ted Cruz already to be the Republican nominee. I mean, my question for you, Tucker, about that, I know you... I know you said you'll never do this, but I would ask the question and throw it back to you. Well, why wouldn't you? Given there's this huge ideological battle going on for the conservative right of America, and it's a real split like we've never seen before, and it's over so many issues now. And given that you're clearly on one side of this and clearly spearheading one part of this, why wouldn't you actually run to preserve the heart and soul of the Conservative Party as you see it?
It's not what I do. You know, I have no love of politics. I actually think it's disgusting. I don't understand it very well. It doesn't come.
Oh, please. Tucker Carlson claiming not to understand politics very well. Come on. He's the architect of half this shit.
Naturally, to me, coalition building, you know, I just don't, where you kind of pretend you believe something or de-emphasize another belief in order to get people together to vote for the same person. That's not my default position. I just kind of say what I think. And so I don't know that I'd be good at it, A. B, I think it's very tough to be the president. I've learned that by watching over many years, and because you are constrained in ways that you should not be constrained, but you are. And it's not just because of Israel and its proxies, though that's the number one reason, but there are other reasons. And one is the size of the agencies. They're autonomous. They're countries. How do you get them under control? Some of them are dangerous. And so that's hard. It's really hard. I don't know that I'd be great at that.
I don't believe that Tucker Carlson believes half the shit he says. I think Tucker Carlson knows exactly what he's saying and doing, and he knows that he's completely full of shit with half of it.
And there's a risk, of course, involved. And mostly because it's just not what I've done. And I hate egomania. I hate hubris and the idea like, I've been a successful cable news host. I should be president. Like that whole way of thinking is disgusting to me. However, if I got to run against Ted Cruz and debate him again on camera, I would run for emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. I'd run for pope. I'd run for head of the library board. I would run for anything for the opportunity to do that and watch Ted Cruz and it appeals.
I assume Ted Cruz isn't going to do it anymore. Isn't going to debate Tucker, right?
So the mean part of me, I think, all you need to do with Ted Cruz, another Harvard graduate. All the dumbest people went to Harvard. That's a talking point, but it's actually real. Ted Cruz went to Harvard. Bill Ackman, who's like a moron, went to Harvard. And Ben Shapiro went to Harvard.
Yeah, that tells me they're not stupid. They're evil.
Anyway, if he's like this famously brilliant guy, silver-tongued Ted Cruz, he's going to be on the Supreme Court. You ask him the simplest question possible. I'm only capable of dumb questions because I'm not a genius. Like,
no, he's such an idiot, dude. I cannot stand how he pretends to be just this normal fella, just a normal guy, just like you, just like everybody else, when in reality, he has more in common with billionaires than he has in common with us. Is he a billionaire? He may be. I don't know.
What's the population of Iran? What Bible verse are you talking about? Dumb stuff. He can't answer any of it. Like nothing. And that to me was like amazing. It wasn't like I went in there with hyper complicated questions. I'm a really well-experienced interviewer. I'm going to trip you up with my sophistry. It was like, hey, Ted, who lives in Iran? No clue. And he's calling for its overthrow. So I imagine we'd have more fun like that. And I would stop anything I was doing to have more of that because I just loved it.
There's a book out about you called Hated by All the Right People, which is a brilliant title, something you should be very proud of. Have you read this book?
No, it's the second book about me I have not cracked. I hope by the time I die, hopefully many years from now, I will have a whole shelf of books about me I've never read or even opened. No, I haven't. But, I sort of know who I am. I know my faults. I have some sense of my strengths. But most important, I've been married to the same girl for 35 years, been with her for 42.
What does that have to do with literally fucking anything?
I've got a bunch of kids. They know me well. My college roommate, freshman year college roommate, is my business partner. So like I'm surrounded by people I've known all my life, and I care about their opinions. I don't care so much about what some book author who I never even talked to thinks of me. I bet it's not flattering. It's my guess.
Well,
let me guess. I'm an anti-Semite.
Well, no, actually, there were just some funny things. Well, I mean, you may not find them funny, but there were some certain things in there which my team assembled, which you're under no obligation to answer, by the way, but they're just quite entertaining.
I don't care. I'm happy to.
Interesting. So they found a book about Tucker Carlson, and they're going to provide some of the main criticisms, and he's going to respond. Okay.
Please.
Well, it claims that you were a brilliantly gifted but wayward youth who lost his virginity at 14 in a visit to a Nevada brothel arranged by your father.
Wow, that's pretty direct.
Is that true?
Not true.
I don't believe him. I'm sorry. I'm very suspicious about how he reacted to that just now.
Father. Is that true?
Not true. Not true.
Not true?
Not true. I mean, not true in the potato. I can say not.
It's absolutely true, right? That is absolutely true. He didn't see that shit coming, did he? Oh my God, dude. That's fucking insane. He lost his virginity in a brothel because his dad hired somebody? Holy shit.
Not true. No, my father? No, here's the part that I want to say is definitely not true.
Your father wasn't there.
My father.
That's okay. That's good. I appreciate that.
No, of course not. That's gross. Come on now. No, you can't bring your son to a bordello. No, of course. No. My father would, I promise. My father's passed away. He's not here to hear this, but in his memory, I just want to be really, really clear. No, my father would never do that. And I would never accompany him.
But just to be clear,
dad to a whorehouse.
But that is a qualified denial of one aspect of the sentence.
I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm, but I will say, yeah, there were some wayward elements in my youth for sure. I was not.
He absolutely lost his virginity in a brothel via his father, right?
Successful in school and all that entails. But, and that's why I've never been a huge proponent of college. I certainly got very little out of it. I harmed myself a lot during it. And so I've been pretty transparent about that. I've never claimed to be impressive. I couldn't get into college and I couldn't get a job. So I wound up in journalism, by the way. I tried to have a real job as a teacher or operations.
Journalism is not a real job?
Officer at CIA. They turned me down. They actually did turn me down, by the way. It's not an op. And I was not impressive at all. And last thing I will say
that was actually my second. Well, that's actually in the book, because apparently the agency preferred not to hire people who they viewed as gabby and insubordinate.
Oh, is that true? I didn't even, I took all these personality assessment tests. I was under family pressure to do this. So I did.
I find it interesting that he denied the previous thing, but he's taking stock in the second thing from the book. That means that this book is absolutely accurate. That shit is wild. I should read this book.
And I thought it'd be interesting, by the way, to live abroad. And it was 1990. It was a different world, right? And I'm not a CIA officer now, nor am I working for them in any capacity at all. In fact, they hassled me yesterday. But I did apply, and I was told I had used, forbidden substances within the last year, and that's why I didn't get it. But I am gabby and insubordinate. There's no question about that. I am both gabby and insubordinate. And they gave me these personality tests, which lasted all day long. Anyone who's applied to a federal, national security type job knows what I'm talking about. And they find out who you really are. And I am totally unsuited for a job like that, like completely. But you don't know yourself when you're 20, right?
No, God, if I had a book like this, all hell would break loose. The final one I liked was that it charted your experience on Dancing with the Stars in 2006. You were voted off first, and the book quotes you as saying the experience rattled you more than Hezbollah. Is that true?
Rattled me more than Hezbollah. Actually, I have spent time with Hezbollah. I know Ben Shapiro is going to want to send me a pager after I say this. I was just covering them as a journalist, but it was during the 2006 war with Israel under the Omer government. No, it didn't. I mean, I was humiliated, but, I think it's good for a man to be humiliated. It is. It is, especially if you're on television. It's good because everyone just kisses your butt and the makeup artists are fawning over you. And you can convince yourself of the great lie, which is, I'm very impressive. I'm so important because I've got some dumb cable TV show. And so getting up there and being revealed as ungainly was good for me. I have to say, I have never gained weight so fast as when I did Dancing with the Stars, because all I did was eat creme brulee and chain smoke cigarettes all day long.
I need to find the name of that book real fast. I'm going to look this up and download it. Oh, legal. Yeah, legal.
And by the end, I was on the verge of type 2 diabetes and emphysema. It was, everyone else got fit and they were like, ooh, I'm getting in shape for Dancing with the Stars. I was sitting by the pool, burning camels, stress eating. It was not a high point for me, I would say.
Well, while you were doing that, I was almost at exactly the same time competing in a show called Celebrity Apprentice, where I met the host.
I remember
Donald J. Trump, and he voted me his apprentice.
That was 20 years ago. I remember that so well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we were both in Los Angeles
pirouetting,
at the time.
And I was in the boardroom. Yeah. Yeah.
Hilarious.
It's been a long journey.
Amazing where we wound up, Piers Morgan.
These people are so fucking cringy, dude. Oh my God. All right, I got the name of the book. I'm going to download it. Oh, legal
It has been a long journey. Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
Tucker, I love talking to you. I don't agree, actually, as you said, with a lot, many things you say.
Yeah,
I've got to say, I don't think I've ever interviewed you where I've agreed with more of what you said than I have today. And so I'm grateful to you for doing another interview with me. And I just want to say that. I just think I've found myself nodding along to almost everything you said. I think there's been so much crap talked about anti-Semitism, weaponizing it as a way to censor people, to threaten, to bully people, led by people like Ben Shapiro, who've exposed themselves just as shameless little hypocrites and propagandists, actually, for a government which is thoroughly worthy through its actions of being scrutinized properly and criticized properly. And it doesn't mean I disagree with everything the Israeli government does. I don't. But there are some things I inherently don't like about what they're doing, and I don't think they're accountable. I don't think they allow freedom of the press, and therefore it's incumbent on all of us to properly scrutinize them. And if you don't like what they're doing, you should be allowed to say so loudly and proudly in a free democratic society like America or the UK or anywhere else. Because otherwise, what's the point of democracy if you can't criticize a government? It's absurd. And the idea that you extrapolate that to mean, well, if you criticize a government, then you must hate the country and hate the people is ridiculous.
It's propaganda for sure.
And actually offensive. And on that, I just think on that fundamental point, you and I could not be more rock solid.
So nicely put. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Great to talk to you, Tucker.
Wow, that shit was wild. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. That brothel shit was totally true, right? That seemed 100% real to me. All right. I guess I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. It's been fun. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow morning, okay?